Okay, I'm pretty confident I'm live. Some feedback would be helpful in the comments. So I'm going to recap what was a pretty pathetic performance last week in a bit, but I'm going to restart with an intro just because everything got bungled last week. Go over a little on who I am, whether or not you should listen to this, how much these games do or do not mean, and kind of go over like why I'm even here. So if you've never heard of me before, my name on the internet is Barry Horse. I bet these games for a living. That sentence in 2025 means a lot of things, so I'll kind of get into that just by sharing my screen in 1 minute. So really quick, and sorry, I know I'm dumbing it down for a lot of you, but could probably put most people who bet on these games for a living in two buckets. One is top down, one is, I think he came up with these phrases, I think. Basically, if you want to just assume all these games close perfect, they represent all information when limits are the highest, when everybody's had a chance to put their input into this. And that there's no way for any extra thing to happen. You will win if you lay 2.5 minus 110 on 1,000 football games that close 3. You don't need to know or care why they're closing 3 other than just natural market dynamics are arriving there. You can use the market, so to say, as your source of truth. Just assume, maybe you don't think nobody beats it, but you don't think you're capable of it. And you can just find off-market numbers. So like, there's no great example in the NFL tonight, but like some of the, like there's a scalp out there apparently right now on NC State. I don't know how real that Superbook number is or the Sharp AG number, but like you could earn a scalp right there on that game right now. Same with A&M, Utah State. You could just look for good numbers, think they're going to close good, and add up a ton of like value bets, and just bow down to the market and use that. Not very stressful, zero judgment either way if that's what you do. Great way to make a very legitimate of people. That's not what I do. I am what people would call an originator or handicapper. I don't really care what word you use. Where I basically have a number for all these games. Obviously, I have a conviction level tied to each of those numbers. And I have actual opinions that the market is wrong on some of these games, like we'll get to in a bit with some of these. And so when I bet a game, I'm not betting if I liked over in this North Texas game, I'm not betting over 55.5 at Circa, and that's the reason I win. And then coming back under here, wherever all the scalps would be right now, I'm winning because if I think Chiefs should be -4, as arrogant as this sounds, I don't necessarily need what might be 3.5 or 7 syndicates who might be running good right now or not, or, one got all their money from Bitcoin or poker and now they think they're good at sports and, it's going to close good because they have more money than whatever. I just think it should be 4 because of how I understand math, physics, and the game of football. I don't think that of tonight, to be clear. But if I bet it, I'm betting, 3 or 3 juice. I'm taking down the whole market for a big bet. This obviously is a lot more stressful, a lot more uncertain, and frankly, a lot more difficult. I'm not saying any of this to say, look how cool I am, but just so you understand like who you're listening to, basically. I'll go into a little of why I do this. I kind of came up with this example. All I care is row 7. So like my goal is not to like win units. If my goal was to win units, I would get off all these off market numbers. I'd jam the board on Sunday night the second all these openers come. I am looking to make Bitcoin. Like I want more Bitcoin than what I started with. And so my ROI win rate, as long as it's profitable, I just want the most output for these seasons and the amount of work I'm putting in. And so the reason I wait until now, which if you don't know, these numbers are already containing a lot of information. Basically, on Sunday, anybody who wants to bet 4 figures will bet all their opinions on Sunday night. Anyone who's betting 5 figures on a game basically gets that done Monday through Thursday. Pretty much right now during this call, like we might see some moves. Like it looks like this total moved. Right now is where you'd start seeing low 6-figure bets, And then tomorrow on game day, you see the mid 6-figure and 7-figure bets start shaping stuff. And so if you don't know what that means, like I basically view any game we're going to bet today at a painted number on Friday afternoon in college or pro I would consider that an opposition game. Like basically right now, 99% of the main stakeholders of shaping these prices who know what they're doing have professed their opinion, and it's represented in all these numbers right now. And if a number right now is here painted for us to bet, that's because everybody other than like half a dozen people who want to bet 7 figures a game on these games has already put their opinion in and said, no, I think this game is well priced. I'm leaving it. And so to bet it right now at minus 110, you're basically saying, no, they're wrong, I'm right. It's a form, I would call it, of an opposition game, to be honest. This is not the easiest game to be played. Still possible. This isn't, like I said 10,000 times probably, I'm not trying to day trade or even swing trade the S&P 500. Like, like I said, I can just see it, speak for myself, like in my shaping, to the extent that I do have any influence on these numbers. Like if Bitcoin tripled, that has nothing to do with my opinion on how to evaluate BYU's offensive line. I would have more influence in the market. If you think that's going to cause the lines to close more efficiently, that's up to you. But ultimately at this stage right now, in these last 24 hours, it's really like, 7 or 10 individuals or, groups, but individuals leading them that you could kind of name that are shaping them. It's not like we have 25 crazy Wall Street hedge funds with 1,000 Harvard and MIT engineers each doing all kinds of high frequency trading stuff. Like there's rooms people are missing things, as we saw on some of the moves in the games last week. So yeah, the reason I do this, I'll go over kind of last year, especially if you're new to this, just because I want to set a context for like expectations of how good these games could be. This is not easy, but I do have really high confidence we're going to be better than 52.4% in the long run. Now, the sample of number of games I'm going to see where I have conviction they're just broadly mispriced at a painted number on Friday afternoon. Where's last year? Here's what I did last year on these calls. You can see I barely had 100 games. The win rate's kind of where I would like it to be. I'm always going to err on the side of caution, under betting edges, under betting the board. I'll get into that in a minute because despite that, I'm actually incredibly disappointed with my work last week. But yeah, that's what I've done. And I do want to go over kind of example seasons here, just especially if you're new to this. So you don't assume like, oh, some pro who's betting a bunch of money is going to be giving these games away for free on the internet. He can't lose. I'm going to sell my house, start betting a third of my bankroll on each of these. And if he goes on any losing streak, my life is ruined. I'm saying that half sarcastically, but I just know how some people in gambling are. So I want to just give and set reasonable expectations for like what losing streaks and performances could be. If you like mathematically guarantee I'm going to have 113 bets again and be exactly 56% again, even still, you can see in this number, losing seasons could be possible, like down 2.7 units in this simulation, up 13.3, up 5, down 0.8. Up 13.3, up 9, up 7, up 3, up 15. Like you can keep going. Eventually you could have run really hot and have some awesome year like that 24 unit year. But you can see what the max drawdowns are as well. This isn't like candy from a baby rigged Russian ping pong. Like this is real stuff. So yeah, I just thought this might be helpful to go over. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. These are just examples of sort of how I think I would perform if I was jamming openers. If you see this, and I can share a little bit of lessons as I've scaled this up, is for anybody who is still in these two ranges, I would be very careful just assuming that if you're performing something on the order of this against openers and you see you're averaging, let's say 2 points of CLV a game, and you look back and see what that would be worth in win rate, and you see that would still bring maybe your 58% down to 54%, and you would just translate straight to here. Those 2 points per game are not remotely uniformly distributed. What happens basically is if you're betting in this range or even middle of the week, there's so many games that just open wildly, ridiculously wrong by a touchdown, to where, let's say you're betting like close to 20 games a week here. 3 or 4 of them, you're going to bet under 57 and it closes 51. And you're going to go like 2-1 on those games every week. And you're making like 15 units a year just on those. And then on the other let's call it 250 bets that you're making the rest of the 15 or 20 units on, you're not really having a huge leeway to give up 2 extra points on all of those by betting later in the week. So just be very careful and assuming that if you're doing this, that you would automatically do this. This was like a huge learning hurdle for me to get here. But yeah, I just want to go over that. So you know who you're listening to. None of this is like, look how cool and rich I am. Like, but just I've seen, and this is like really the case with a lot of the internet, is like people are either Satan or God. And I just see wild opinions of what people think I do or don't do. So you can just hear straight from the horse's mouth. I'm not going to tell you how much Bitcoin I have, but usually on a game that I think is, in this range of win rate, I'm probably betting around 100 a game, like around a Bitcoin a game. And that's why I wait, because I can't really do that until later in the week. I know I sound really unrelatable and punchable to a lot of people. I don't know how else to say it, but like this number is not really changing much for me. So this is only worth the extreme effort and time I give it if there is a nut like this at the end. I think this chart also can kind of show you why it's so stupid to assume that if I am as good as I say I am and I keep winning as I have, that I should be a billionaire right now. I'm 30 years old. And in terms of like savings, I've perfectly allocated, in my opinion, other than maybe I could have had more NVIDIA stock, but like I've significantly outperformed in my savings decisions than every hedge fund in the world by like basically an order of magnitude by being all in Bitcoin for the last decade. And I'm still not close to being a billionaire. You can see right now, like say I do something like this in the football, something like that in the baseball. I'm not saying this is me, this is a hypothetical person, but just so you can see the compounding of money, like pretend some imaginary person had a bankroll of about 100 Bitcoin, call it $10 million. And they are not going to start, directly Kelly betting everything they do. They're probably going to be comfortable betting something around 100 grand a game, a Bitcoin a game, something like this. As I just showed you, like it is possible with these win rates to have like 20 unit drawdowns. You can see right here in this row J5 or sell J5. Like you simulate enough, you're going to get some wickedly down bad run like that. If you're betting 2 or 3 Bitcoin a game and you only got 100, you can see how uncomfortable emotionally and everything it would be to go on like a down 40 or 60 Bitcoin. Like you're wiping everything. So it wouldn't be smart to do that. Let's assume you're betting something like 1 a game. Where was I? Here. And you end up with something like this, that 100 Bitcoin bankroll in EV is going to be, call it you win 10, 15 units in the baseball, 10, 15 units in the football. You're up 20, 30 units. It's great. God forbid you want to be a California resident. You're giving away half of that to the government. God forbid you want to spend some of that. You're probably spending the rest of like the half of the original half that you're keeping. And you're walking away with like adding to your bankroll. If you want to reinvest 100% of it into continuing to bet and scale the betting, your 100 Bitcoin might be, if you're lucky and smart with taxes and everything, 110 Bitcoin next year. So now you'll bet 1.1 Bitcoin a game in 2026. You can see how this scales. It's not like I'm just adding 50% to my bankroll every year. My edge is not Harala Bob in the 2000s where I'm getting like 4 points the best of it on half times. That's a huge difference. If you get like a few hundred of those in a year and your win rate's going to be 60, then it does become responsible to jam like 5% of your bankroll on single games, have multiples of your bankroll at risk in a week because it's just so preposterously unlikely to lose a real meaningful amount where you could wipe out everything if your win rate's going to be north of 60%. That's not what I do. You can see why I'm not a billionaire yet. Like go plug in a compounding calculator if you're going to do 10% a year on whatever I'm at. Like I'm 30 years old. I got to do this a few more decades. It's not like you just quantum leap if you can beat baseball or even right now a painted Friday number in football. It's not like you just instantly explode into gazillionaire status and you're on the beach next year. So yeah, that's why I'm still here. Maybe too personal, but now you can know who you're listening to. I know some people think I'm some dipshit betting $100. That's certainly not true. I've heard some people think I'm some like crypto gazillionaire and trying to jam everything at post and ruining these markets. I'm not doing that. To be really clear, I do not consider myself the best or anything close to like the end boss that decides where these games close in anything I do. That's not being fake humble. That's just completely true. Now, like I said, I'm not going to be fake humble. I'd be surprised if there's 25 or so more people than me who make more in a year betting on baseball. I could be wrong. But yeah, like there's people who are going to win more than me this year. I'm going to be wrong about plenty of these. You might have information that's better than me. Don't take me as the end opinion of any of these. If you kind of like the Mr. Walters method of handicapping the handicappers, you listen to 7 people who, they're clearly better than 52.4%, and you want to piece together, these 7 opinions I care about. 5 of them, for example, like Virginia this week, 2 of them have no opinion. Maybe Virginia's a good game. Maybe of the 7 guys you care about, 2 of them love Kent, 3 of them love Texas Tech, and 2 have no opinion. Probably you want to leave that game alone. If you want me to be in that group for you, go ahead. I really don't care. I'm probably rambling too much at this point. So that's who I am. That's why I'm doing this. Basically, like I said, I'm 30. Everyone older than me probably thinks I'm a complete idiot to be like tanking edges in any of this. Everyone younger than me can like see the extreme value in social media. I'm making a bet that the amount these streams are going to cost me is worth at least 1 game back from this. So yeah, I'll be really clear. I'm doing these because I not fully out of the goodness of my heart. Like I just want all of you to make money and not me. Like I'm definitely doing this because I think it makes my life better. But that's probably enough on that intro for now. And you can see like the losing expectations. So on last week, I'll always start with recapping. I won't have to waste time with a 15-minute intro. 2 bets. One was utterly horrific. One, as humbly as possible, was probably pretty fantastic. I'll get into the specifics of both in a bit, but I do want to say none of this is like acting for the camera or trying to like show how much I hold myself to a standard. I frankly, I thought I was pathetic last week, honestly. So as you can tell by the way I go through these games, everything I do, I'm like a discretionary trader, discretionary bettor. I don't have a Google sheet that tells me my number on 60 games. I bet it on Monday or Sunday and walk away. Like I'm making a decision on each single game. There's enough hours in the week to do research on all of these. And last week was just like really unacceptably bad from my perspective with some of the games I left alone. I'm definitely always happy to weigh air on the side of caution and lower volume. But the decisions I made last week were just so pathetic. If you go and look, it's not like I got everything right. I think I leaned Alabama, for example, but I still, to the minute I'm recording this, have no earthly idea why I didn't bet Temple or Utah. There never existed a good reason to not bet either of those games. I'm not going to kill myself for some of those. Obviously, I leaned Ohio State and under. I'm not going to kill myself for those, not knowing how the quarterbacks would be or having a super convicted opinion of them. I think I leaned LSU. I definitely leaned Western Michigan on that weeknight game. Like I left so much on the table, but that's going to happen the way I do things. I'm totally okay only betting 2 games, having 50 opinions. And if 50 of the opinions go 40-10, obviously I'm going to feel like FOMO and regret for not betting them, but that's going to happen multiple times this year with the way I do things. That's not what's driving me nuts. What's driving me nuts is there was never one rational reason to not bet Utah or Temple last week, other than me basically being like fearful or shy or like wanting to get this stream started on the right foot. I don't know. I thought the decision making was horrendous last week, to be honest with you. None of this, like I said, is me trying to like act hard or be like so pissed off that I went 1-1. I just have way too much respect for these markets. These are not going to be giving us on Friday afternoon against paid numbers 30 freebies a year. I'm not saying any of these were freebies last week, but I knew Utah was cheap. I'm not going to kill myself for Mississippi State on secondary numbers, but that is worth a talking point when we get into one of these games this week about being okay, maybe not betting the best the number has been all week, as long as it's still the right side. That one, I'm lukewarm on how I should feel about that one, but I'm frankly like disgusted in my thought process and decision making on not betting Temple and not betting Utah. If I continue to make decisions that poorly this year, we will not win. This won't work. So I can't do that again. I'm not going to say I feel the need to apologize, because I don't I owe any of you anything. But I do want to make it clear, like I'm really disappointed in my work last week. And Wake Forest is a good start for it. As I said, I know Ashford's horrible. I know Wake is horrible. I had them as the second worst Power 4 team. It's not really clear I was wrong about Kennesaw in any way. I mean, I'm not saying this ever had a chance to be the right side because it clearly didn't. I will say Claiborne's an NFL running back and like the entire linchpin of what the offense is built around. I don't think they would have covered in any world with him. Well, in most worlds with him. But yeah, it's clear to me. I really not. I'm not sure I'd be upgrading Kennesaw more than a point or two, and would still have them deeply in the negative 20s. But there's a real world where Wake is approaching like Stanford levels, which I could have seen coming with the amount they're spending on basketball and everything. Not a lot's getting diverted to the football team. I'm not going to ruin myself for that one because the same thought process is what got us on this one and some others. I'm not really that, obviously, horrible bet. I would not bet it again, but I'm not disgusted in my process for arriving at that game. I'm really like completely. I couldn't look at myself on Sunday after not betting Temple. I have no idea why I didn't bet that game. I can't get like stage fright. I mean, I could not be more clear about disclaimers and everything. And if the game's good, the game's good. And I got to say it's good. And Temple was good. And I had no clue why I left that alone. Virginia was fantastic. I mean, I'm not all of a sudden boosting Virginia into some like king shit ACC contender. I think I'm right about the quarterback. Like, I think this guy has played a lot of football, knows what he's doing, really sees the field and gets it. And the roster is clearly better. Like, they spent, millions of dollars on this roster. I think there's way more about Coastal. Like I said, I think Emmett Brown, the San Jose transfer for Coastal, really is who's going to run this. MJ Morris is not remotely designed to at all cooperate with this offensive coordinator. Everything about these two new coordinators for Coastal screams like last-ditch effort on Tim Beck to not get fired in 4 months. Frankly, I think that should probably have a favorite, like a minus sign in front if you can find odds on Tim Beck getting fired in December. Yeah, that's like a really bad Sunbelt team, I think. So that's my analysis of that one. Of course, I would rebet it. On the halftimes, pretty content with the work so far. Luckily we got Temple at a dog price at halftime. That was nuts. I didn't deplore Tennessee. That was a lot more passive than Heupel has been in these. I might have overprojected the way Tennessee managed the neutral site NC State game from last year in the second half onto this one. Syracuse does play hard. We'll get to them in a minute for this week against UConn. I'm not positive I rebet that. These 4 winners in a row, I think, were pretty great. I'd love to rebet them. Obviously, we ran very good with some. We got like 2 defensive scores here, but yeah, halftimes were good. Wouldn't change much. If you're interested, the link's below. NFL does start this Sunday and has been my best performance sport of those. So we'll get into games. I'm just going to go one by one down the list. If I have a game, I'll make it as clear as possible. They're already all in bet stamps, so we should be good to go. NFL tonight, I'll keep it short on the side. I think it's completely perfect. If you laid the 2.5s earlier throughout the summer, got in good, just keep it. I will say the total would be my favorite NFL bet of the week if this was in either stadium of the teams or like basically any neutral stadium in the NFL. I would love under with massive conviction. To be clear, I'm not betting it because of the field. Clearly, someone with a lot of money has some speculation, I think, in the field because there's no remote mathematical justification for the price of this total if you're not expecting slipping. Basically, I've seen people make wild guesses on the slippy turf on this Brazil field. It's clear to me the NFL is aware of this. I think they watered it before that Philly game last year. I don't know if it's going to be better this year, but as you can see, we got 60-something games this year. It's not worth it for me to spend 3 hours trying to become like level agronomist on guessing how this Brazilian grass is going to play. I'm going to guess somebody else figured this out better than me, and I'm missing that part of it. But I mean, I'd be making this like 45 juice under or 44.5 with like high conviction if this was on either team's field, honestly. So very strong lean under, like very strong lean under with how these coaches manage these. I think obviously Slater is highly important. I don't think Pipkins is the biggest joke in the world, but he's obviously pretty bad. But it's not quite like Storm Norton from 3 years ago. But I mean, the numbers just even if you like get max humble on none of the goodness of these defenses from last year. I mean, just obvious logic. These are very arguably the 2 best defensive coordinators in football. Definitely 2 of the 5 best. And the way both of these coaches manage specifically against one another funnels into incredibly low scoring games, as we saw twice last year. As we saw, these two defenses gave up the first and fourth least points, I think, last year. And then the matchups are really fantastic for LA not scoring, frankly, with McDuffie probably being able to travel with McConkey. So, yeah, I'd love under on any field besides this one. I still kind of like under decently, even making my best guess on the value of the field, but I'm not enough of an agronomy expert to tell you. Two-way made sense here. All the offseason work in the world would tell you JMU is like by far the king shit Sunbelt team this year that probably starting out, at least right now in week one, lays 5 or 6 over whatever the second best Sunbelt team would be. I think I agree. I think there's decent signal, and then like paying the backup quarterback a little from UNLV and him still not winning the job. I think this guy from last year is pretty good. I love this coach. This game has probably 2 of my 10 favorite coaches. I'm starting out Louisville probably in the low teens, around like a plus 11 or 12. Frankly, I actually think JMU's pretty positive, like around plus 2, plus 3. Even with big home, I'd be making this lower. I haven't bet dog. I don't think it's that great of a bet. I don't think I'm great at translating what JMU is versus a G4 team. They've played a couple in the last few years that have played to really big numbers where they just haven't even been competitive. But there's nothing about their roster where they shouldn't be able to at least compete in the game. So at current number, I'd only bet JMU, but it's not at all worth it to me. I actually have a bet in this one already in bet stamp. I'll recap and track everything at the end. So I think 316 Maryland NIU under 46 is in that range of 55% and worth a bet. Somehow NIU won the MAC, as people may not remember, just 2 years ago. I think it's probably slept on, myself included, on just how much worse this team got. I mean, they were playing 18 new starters last week. Crazy. I mean, they played on their core special teams. They were playing 6 or 7 guys last week who have never played a snap of college football. It was a mess. The core of why I think this number is here in broad daylight to still bet on game day morning. 46 would probably be the perfect number if you just averaged all the right ways to mathematically come up with these. I think it's missing a really 2 important angles. One is the way NIU has managed and coached all of these underdog G4 games they've played, and the MAC title game against Kent State when they had Sean Lewis and were running the Art Briles stuff is crazy ball hogging clock control. So if you go watch the NIU Kent State MAC title game from 2023, the NIU NC State game from last year, and the NIU Notre Dame game from last year, it's really, really clear how he manages these. I expect the same, and this is probably the worst quarterback NIU has had in my time of doing numbers. The guy can't play at all. I love betting against him last year 2 or 3 times. I think he came in the Bowling Green game and I think played like a scoreless second half because they're back. The Basilak got hurt in the Bowling Green game too. He's completely physically incapable of throwing, in my estimation. There's nothing there. Maryland, like I said, I'm quite bullish career-wise on this Maryland freshman quarterback. But there were some issues last week. Really, the reason I'm not betting Maryland is I know these 2 coaches love one another, and the offensive coordinator too. I think they're in the NFL together, Hammock and one of the coordinators. They respect each other a lot. I see extraordinarily low probability of Maryland running up the score at all. They had 6 interceptions last week against FAU, who Kitley is probably the number 1 over merchant of all coaches in America. And that game still went way under with a defensive touchdown and 6 short fields from picks. So I was against what I thought FAU's defense was, and still kind of do think was a little disappointed in how Maryland was able to move the ball. I don't expect this game to be competitive whatsoever. I definitely strongly lean Maryland. I think NIU, I sort of missed myself in offseason stuff. I think they are worth a pretty quick and strong reaction to last week's game. I actually think that contained a lot of information with how new players are. I did actually, on that point, want to quickly go over this. If you're watching this and you're over the age of 15, let's say, you've whether you remember it or not is debatable, but you've definitely heard of something called Bayes' theorem if you went to any school in your life. You may have forgotten all of it, but you studied something called conditional probabilities. I won't get into any equations or formulas, but I think this picture is kind of helpful, especially in a week 2 when you're reacting to stuff. And really just helps in like all walks of life, which is just having a framework for updating your beliefs. Basically, all information that could change your opinion is worth considering. And it's really helpful to have a framework on how much you should use that evidence to update your beliefs. So in this example, you can see maybe this is what you thought of who's somebody who dominated last week. Maybe you thought LSU's outcome this season looked something like this. And maybe you started their power rating around a 20. You thought there's some chance they could be up around a 23, something down around -16. And then you get this evidence where they looked arguably close to like a 28. They looked awesome in Death Valley. That was not an easy game to play. Maybe now we got to update our belief. What's the probability that this light green thing would have been shown to us if they really were this? Probably not very high. So probably we got to meet somewhere in the middle and use this green line. That's an extraordinarily non-mathematical, dumbed down way to think about all of this, but just something everybody should consider when like analyzing this. Maybe it's not time to say Texas is winning 6 games, Arch Manning receptions than touchdowns, and he's never going to do anything in the game of football. And this thought he should have and deserves to be the Heisman frontrunner before last week. It's also be stupid to be doubling down on that and not update your opinion at all. So don't freak out, but don't update nothing. As we get into these, you'll kind of see I probably err way more on the side of overreacting than most like spreadsheet virgin math nerds like myself. I on average, I think I'd be an extremely mediocre bookmaker. On average, I think I'd be really bad at doing that with every game on the board and probably be a wrong decision. But on the games where I love reacting, the track record is pretty strong. And I think that's maybe one advantage I have is knowing when to make really pretty massive and strong reactions, even off something that contains as little information as possessions of one football game against a bad FCS team might be for NIU. So I like under. The ones I have no opinion, I'll go faster. Penn State, I'm doing nothing. I will say Franklin looked incredibly pissed off to not cover last week. The Nevada coach did a lot of what I expect NIU to do tonight. The Nevada coach was just like complete entire game to try and cover. And so we got 2 pretty strong forces of people trying to cover last week. It went the dog's way. Kind of made sense to me. FIU, I strongly suspect will not do that. And I strongly suspect Penn State would love to cover. I just am not quite sure they're physically capable of this being like super cheap. So at 41.5, which there's barely any left, I actually kind of lean Penn State, but it's nothing worth betting for real. I was going to bet this if it stayed. So this is nuts. But like I never write these games off. So I think it came out today. Morton is going to play. Yeah. And it was trending that way if you listen to McGuire. Now, I don't expect him to play much more than 1 quarter. And if you were going to bet this late horrible number on Texas State, you'd basically be needing Mitch Griffiths, the 3rd stringer, to be scoring in the 4th quarter, which I think he will. So Kent State just won, I think, their 2nd football game in like 30 months, maybe more than that, on a kick return touchdown against Merrimack, who is horrible. I watched every minute of that game. I'm pretty confidently keeping Kent State down in the -30s, like quite confidently. Texas Tech, I don't want to freak out. I think they play Arkansas Pine Bluff. I don't want to freak out too much, but if you missed it, the Arkansas Pine Bluff game, there was a weather delay and they played 2 8-minute running quarters. Like they basically achieved that score. I think it was 67-7 in 3 quarters of football. And that was the craziest turnout to a game they were probably laying 50 in I've ever seen in my life. I mean, the Texas Tech student body was like treating this like a Super Bowl, like throwing tortillas the whole game up 60. It was kind of nuts. I recommend watching it, honestly. But Morton looked fantastic. So if you don't know, Morton's been injured with like 7 different injuries the last 2 years. And I think it should contextualize a lot of how you price him because he's been out there battling through a lot. He looks easily the best of his entire career right now. If you don't know, Texas Tech has this oil billionaire in the state who I think played for the team like 25, 30 years ago, spent a shitload of money on them, and they have really real guys. but it's not just like a random assortment of NFL draft picks. These are like good guys who are into it. I really like what they're building as a team. Like the two main ones would be Romello Height and David Bailey as edge rushers. They have this receiver, Virgil, if you remember from Miami, Ohio last year. He's really good. I think this offensive coordinator might be fantastic. Leftwich, I think is Mac Leftwich, I think is his name. And Morton looks the best he has. So I'm confident pricing Texas Tech like right there with like the really good Big 12 contenders. Unfortunately, that leaves this price on numbers pretty perfect, and you'd just be needing this to be, Kent State is celebrating and just won their first game of all these kids' lives, basically. Like basically the second college football win for everybody on the roster. If you think they're going to have like the greatest focused week of practice and now believe in themselves, I don't think that's completely unjustified. But that's not the way I'd lean, and I kind of see Texas Tech killing them. But at this number, there's nothing to do. I'll skip this. The number's perfect. Obviously, completely expecting Morris to play. That's priced in. I wouldn't even be like expecting him to play hampered. It's the right number for now. I'm way more willing to elevate Virginia. They do have the better quarterback in the game. If you need action, I do lean Virginia again, but this is nothing near the caliber of the edge they were last week. So obviously a gazillion dollars got bet on San Jose last week on game day. They very probably were not the right side, but I will say like there's some element in terms of like just pricing going forwards. Like last game happened, we need to figure out the goodness of these two teams. CMU could have won a lot in that first half on novelty. Like I said in the call last week, like for a year zero rebuild, that roster is not that bad. Like it's still a lot of legit seniors who have been on the team the last 3 years. Like a lot of them played a lot of football. If you missed it, they're playing I shouldn't talk that much about CMU. Well, they play here. They're playing 3 quarterbacks on purpose. There's a chance San Jose wasn't like expertly prepared for what they were going to do. And obviously they ran out horrible in turnovers. So I'm not going to freak out on San Jose. Like I'm going to respect all the offseason work, which is, I think it's pretty easily the second best Mountain West team. Maybe now after seeing Fresno bottom out last week, maybe you can start putting them close together. But something probably a little better than a -10. After seeing Texas, like I don't know how you'd feel great about making them much more than a plus 24. I kind of think it's a 24 versus a -8. And this number actually, unless you're expecting some monster run out the score from Sark off a loss, which is possible, maybe likely that, they're pissed off enough to make a statement, but I'm not positive they're that good at football to like really, I'm definitely not interested in laying this whatsoever. And on numbers, I actually do kind of lean San Jose if you need something. I'd probably lean over decently, just with San Jose State's pace and massive respect for the OC. And, he looked horrible last week, but all anybody's told me from San Jose all year is how good this quarterback's been playing. And, he was the second half of last year. So nothing to play. Jackson State impressed me a lot. If you missed it, UCF's quarterback, Cam Fancher, he played at FAU last year, took a really hard hit and got hurt. UCF seemed to borderline improve after that. I don't think that as they play next week, I don't think figuring that out is worth heaps. The guy who played is Taven Jackson, I think is his name. He played at Indiana 2 or 3 years ago. He can basically do everything Fancher can. I've never been like, wow, Fancher's this like $10 million quarterback. Jack State impressed me just not knowing what they'd be. I think this coach might be kind of good. He's been around a lot of good NFL and college defenses in his life. I think I was really impressed just with like their bodies on defense. That was a really weird game with like a 3-hour weather delay. I wouldn't be freaking out too much, but I am close to making Jack's like probably not quite a -15. Like, UCF could just be a joke. That's why I don't want to like have too much conviction here. Liberty is using Ethan Vasco on quarterback. Style-wise, he is obviously Chadwell recruited him to Coastal, and he is like a Chadwell type of quarterback. But with the way they play and the amount the clock's supposed to run, probably for both teams, I do think this total is decently high. If you missed it, Jack State plays 2 quarterbacks on purpose as well. though it's mostly Wims. Wimsat's going to be the one throwing everything, who's not good. So yeah, I lean under. I think Liberty's probably a -3. I think Jack State's probably like a -12. I could maybe make it 7, but the stronger lead be under, but I'm not betting anything. CMU, like I said, is playing 3 quarterbacks on purpose. Pitt killed and covered against Duquesne. If you don't know Pitt, there's a few like this. Like we'll get to Arkansas State has a Narduzzi guy. UCF actually from last week has Grinch, who's like this. USF has Orlando, who's like this. Basically, I put most defense in buckets of just like extreme, like Duke is like this, of extreme like stuff going on, playing a million miles an hour, 17 different blitzes, one gappy, aggressive, like I don't care about giving up yards. We got to get the ball. Points are too easy to score in college football nowadays. Or extreme, too gappy, Belichick-y, kind of is an interesting game because of that, the Illinois-ish type stuff, Washington-ish. Pitt is obviously extraordinarily aggressive. I think it's quite possible CMU turns it over multiple times. They're not at all going to be able to control the trenches like San Jose. And frankly, look, 14.5 was probably the wrong number last week for CMU San Jose. But if it was right, Pitt is stealing here. Like Pitt is easily 7 over San Jose. Pitt is probably like 12 over San Jose. So this number is kind of saying last week was 5 points off for CMU San Jose, or because I kind of think it was 5 points off, but like just in terms of like CMU being able to win on the novelty from the start. But was it 5 points off in team quality? That's a little bit much for me. I would lean Pitt decently, to be honest, with this offensive coordinator and how fast they're going, but it's priced in and not worth at all laying anything worse than 21. This Iowa quarterback's supposed to be a lot better. I'll believe it when I see it against a real team. It's like the most obvious handicap in the world, but just, with this game always playing to what it plays to, it feels silly to even think about laying 3.5. I kind of did lean Iowa State at 3. I think they're probably getting up there close to like a Texas Tech in terms of like real Big 12 content. There's like this whole the Big 12 is going to be insane this year. The whole Big 12, like the top 6 teams are all like in the mid to high teens, but with like crazy football handicaps and like matchups going on. Like Utah against these guys is going to be wild. Arizona State, like all these guys at the Texas Tech. I kind of Kansas State's below them actually, but based on what Iowa State just was against Kansas State, this is like a big move and at least pricing in everything I just said. So there's nothing to do. I will say Syracuse, this game was played last year. Syracuse was 9.5. It landed 7, but it landed 7 with a concession. 9.5 looked like the perfect price. I don't think Syracuse is that much worse than last year. I just think that number, that's another one. I'm pretty pissed I didn't bet Tennessee last week. I'm not results into this. Like, obviously, I wish I had more money than I had right now by betting Tennessee because I know the result. But, like, process-wise, I don't think it was good process to leave Tennessee alone last week. They were always going to be in the high teens. And Syracuse was always going to be close to a 0 for power ratings. Anyways, this game was 9.5 last year. If you don't know, I don't think this is on Spank odds. Yeah, it's not. So UConn's best safety is out this week. What's his name? Malachi McClain. The Syracuse coach is extraordinarily pissed off last week. They came out relatively healthy, though. You can see Spank odds has everything I know as of now. Spot odds, sorry. I'd be keeping Syracuse probably around a 0. Frankly, on numbers, UConn's weird because I don't know what to put them in within a conference because they're not in one. I think something like a -5 makes sense, and I think this line's pretty good. But I will say Syracuse, if anything, was the right side last year at 9.5, and there's not real obvious reasons why this number would change so much in 8 months or however long it's been. I guess I'd baby lean Syracuse at this price, but I definitely would not lay 115 on 6.5. Like, it's just, don't bet it, or do if you want, but I don't see a point. All right, meaningful injuries here. So Kilgore on SMU is a pretty important player. He's like captain, middle of the defense, green dot. He's out. That probably shouldn't say questionable. He's the guy who scored. Well, I guess he's doubtful. He scored, I think, their first or second touchdown against East Texas last week on a pick six. He's a very good player. Hudson, I'm also considering doubtful as of now, the receiver. He also matters. I think he scored last week on their first few touchdowns. These SMU weapons are not what they've been pretty repetitively and cycling through for the last few years. Jennings, I thought, played like shit last week with like some of the sacks he took. He threw an end zone pick that was brutal. I don't know how much they just sleepwalked through East Texas. That's super possible. But for a team that spends the amount of money they do, and for a team that was pretty consistently power rated in like, I think I laid like 10 or 11 with Penn State in the playoff against them, and Penn State was being rated as a 24 the whole time. So yeah, I mean, SMU most, and what they were against Clemson too, like SMU most of the year was in like the very low positive teens. So of a team that's supposed to start there, kind of like where Auburn was being priced last week and probably is, to me, BYU looked pretty clear like a +7. The gap here on what these numbers were supposed to be, I don't blame computer models probably liking SMU a lot here. That's kind of the way on numbers I was going to be. But when you go through it and how bad SMU played last week, I'm not as convinced. And SMU is also not really doing as many design runs. So what all the Auburn running from Jackson Arnold last week was SMU was declaring what they were doing on defense, which, side note, I don't really know what to think of Aranda's trajectory as a coach. Like I thought really highly of him, really lowly of him. End of last year is trending good. And now they're just doing a lot of stale declarative stuff on defense that makes it easy for somebody like Arnold, who should not be able to read stuff like that, to make decisions pre-snap. I don't know why. And that's where all the running came from. So those weren't really scrambles. SMU is way more of a scrambler, Jennings. I'd be careful assuming just because a quarterback just ran nuts on Baylor, they can't stop the quarterback run. SMU has a mobile quarterback that's going to help them for a number of reasons. One, that distinction, but then also two, with like all this matchup stuff people love. Like this quarterback sucks against cover two. This quarterback sucks against man. Like if you can explain to me the physical characteristic they're lacking that makes them incapable of handling that, please tell me. Like maybe I believe it if the way to attack most cover twos, or specifically this type of cover two coverage, would be hole shots to either side of the field that you need a certain arm quality to be able to throw. If that's your speculation, then I get it. And we can look at the cornerback and receiver matchups to see if there'd be any edge there that would make it easier. But if it's just magic, Fugazi, he hasn't been good against cover two, therefore I'm going to declare he's bad against cover two. What the fuck do you think they're practicing all week if they're expecting a bunch of cover two and they've known they sucked at cover two? They're probably going to see more cover two. What the fuck do you think they're organizing? So until you can tell me that, it's kind of, and like a lot of times it's the case of like, not to ramble too much, but like in golf, if you're looking at declaring this player cannot play in the wind, and maybe there's nowadays with like all the TrackMan stuff, you can see spin rates and stuff. And, I'd be willing to believe, just even without empiricism, like just logic wise, you can intuit high spin rate players would probably struggle more in the wind, and younger players naturally would too. But if you're just, he's played 10 rounds in the wind and he's been bad, therefore he is a bad wind player, and that's your analysis. Like typically by the time you get enough of a sample size to be able to make a declaration like that, where there would be statistical significance outside of just there's 200 professional golfers who have played rounds in wind, 10 of them just on bad luck and no skill are just going to end up having their bad rounds in the bad wind. That doesn't mean they're bad wind players. By the time you get to a 30, 40 round sample of guys playing in bad wind, yeah, maybe at that point you can declare for the last 34 rounds, they lacked the skill of being able to play in wind. But at this point, they just played 30, 40 high profile rounds of golf in wind. Maybe now they're gaining the skill. They've recognized it's a weakness and they fixed it. So I just be very careful with stuff like that. Sorry to go on too much of a rant for a game I don't think anything of. But yeah, on numbers, I lean SMU pretty strongly, even accounting for these injuries. I think basically this price is penalizing only SMU for last week. And I know it wasn't a great run out for Baylor. I know they gave up a kick return, but they also did not look stellar to me in any way. And a lot of their wins at the end of last year were pretty scammy. So not saying they won every game by 1 point, but like they were good football handicapping or injury reasons why they killed the team they killed. And so this is just like a one-way penalty to me. Home field's probably nothing or half a point. Do what you want. At this price, I definitely need SMU, but I haven't done anything. Duke looked pretty bad against Elon to me. So, I mean, they did run a million miles an hour, like I said, on defense. And they're getting it more. I do love, I loved Mensa last year. He didn't really look like the problem. They were just very slow to start on offense. And, they were in a game in the fourth quarter with Elon. So, yeah, I'm starting Illinois like kind of where like 3 points below maybe like these really good Big 12 teams. Like, I mean, Illinois, Texas Tech is like, maybe they could pick. I'd probably lean Texas Tech. Illinois could be with like, who's someone else up here? I mean, Illinois could play Louisville. You pick it up. That game's pick. I'm not betting it. So that's like, and Duke be, clearly below that. Duke could be with Baylor. These two games actually next to each other are pretty good. You want to switch the teams. SMU, Illinois, pick. I don't think anything of it. Baylor, Duke, same thing. Obviously, you flip home between these two. There's too much weirdness. Like I said, it's like the complete Belichick-y, two-gappy stuff on Illinois' defense, complete Manny Diaz mayhem. I don't really like either team's weapons at all. Lunny, the Illinois offensive coordinator, has gone at varying tempos all the time. If you could talk to him, that'd be great. You probably could have an edge on this total. I don't, so there's nothing to do. Signetti was really pissed last week. If I could bet on does he want to keep scoring in the fourth quarter, I would say absolutely yes. They left a lot on the table last week. And frankly, I think Old Dom scored twice. It was on two pretty crazy busted plays. Like one, I think, was the first offensive play of the game. It was definitely the first drive on like a busted quarterback run. So I'm not all of a sudden worried Indiana isn't close to like a plus 10. They probably still are that, like probably right there with Illinois. Actually, there's like a bunch of teams in a row here near each other. Yeah, maybe Illinois is like 2.5 over Indiana, but they're all right there. And like I said, I don't see any reason at all to think. Wake, that game did not go how I thought. Wake does not have ACC defensive bodies. I thought this quarterback was pathetic for, to score whatever they scored, 9 points running the Bryles offense. And one, I think, was the first offensive drive they played that was scripted. So they scored 3 offensive points after a scripted drive against a horrible Wake defensive roster. I like the Wake defensive coordinator a lot, but I mean, that's gross. So yeah, I probably would have given real consideration to lane 35, but I'm pretty easily priced out here. But, this guy does want to score. Listen to him talk for 10 minutes this week. I mean, and tell me he doesn't know what this number is. I guarantee you he knows, but that's not enough for me to bet a bad number. A&M weirdly impressed me for not covering. All these, like, there's like a hole at the top of the SEC right now that is like some of these teams, and I don't really do the futures, but they're priced just relative to team goodness. I'm not super into the schedules to do that with all of them. But I think they're right there, like on a neutral. Do I really think LSU lays like more than 3 against them? Or like, frankly, even after seeing Alabama, like not really. I kind of think like these good SEC teams this year are all between a plus 20 and plus 25. I don't think any of them are better than that. I don't really know what separates A&M from the rest of them. I mean, they probably have the best offensive line between all of them. They've got more dynamic, like this Concepcion's amazing. He's like easily the most dynamic player they've had in a bit. I like the quarterback. I love the coach. I mean, I think they're at 21. And Utah State would have been, there's two-way action. There's big bets on both sides for Utah State, UTEP last week. I don't know if it closed efficient, but there's a real chance UTEP's horrible. Obviously, I love the Utah State coach, but, they'd still be in like the mid-negative teens. So, yeah, I'm like what's going to be forget if Texas is 1 hour ahead of me. I think it's like just before a noon kickoff Texas time. Are they going to feel the need to go like win by 40? Because if you're laying this number, you need to care a little. I don't have any speculation on that, but on numbers, it actually is a little cheap. The move totally made sense. Less than 31, I probably would lay. Totally agree with the move. It's all handicap though, because frankly, on numbers, Kentucky's still easily not above a plus 10. Like I think Kentucky still has to be in the plus single digits, and Ole Miss is leaning in that kind of the same bucket as A&M.
Limit increase.
These first huge road SEC games, I know Simmons played against Georgia last year for one surprise drive and he balled. I need to see him play a 60-minute road game in a legit SEC game before I do anything considering on him. It totally made sense why people want to bet against this. If you've missed this, he's kind of like this borderline Todd Marinovich type kid where the dad like groomed him to be a pro athlete since he was 2. Like he graduated high school when he's like 16, I think. Like he's already graduated from Ole Miss, I believe, and this is his first year starting. He throws gas. Like I think he throws upper mid 90s. He's like a left-handed reliever on the baseball team. He struck out Condon in a game last year. The Georgia kid. You don't care. You need to win money on these. So yeah, handicap wise, I love taking 10.5 for sure. Numbers wise, not really, but this is a game I would pretty comfortably be using Monster Home. Kentucky, maybe it's skewed. I still don't love Calzada at all, but like their offensive line played really well. To give up 0 sacks to Toledo in a game that was like pseudo competitive means something to me. Their O-line was a lot more impressive than it's been in recent years. Yeah, I mean, you could speculate on Ole Miss revenge. I don't think it means anything, but obviously Ole Miss sleeping through this game last year is the reason they missed the playoff. Maybe they care more. When in doubt, have a massive amount of doubt and skepticism on these like first-time SEC quarterbacks in their first ever real SEC road game doing anything. So that's the rule until broken. But at this price, there's nothing to do. I don't think a ton separates these teams. I lean Kansas pretty strongly. I haven't bet it. I don't think it's like an awesome bet right now. If you missed it, Missouri's kicker is out for the year. Let me pull up all of these. Where's that game? Okay, yeah. Is this on here? Okay, yeah, so they have Kamara doubtful. Kamara's out and Tanner. So that's there. That's good. So I gotta say, very impressed with whoever does the injuries for Spank Odds. They gotta get this one fixed though. You gotta put there, my guys. You're listening. He's a good safety. Yeah, so I mean, I think Missouri is nowhere near that cluster of like these SEC teams, but they're clearly above Kentucky. They're probably in like the complete mid-teens, in the low teens. If you want to call this 3 on a neutral, that seems perfect to me, which would mean I'd be closer to 5.5, frankly, than 6.5 for this game. And honestly, with the funnels, Kansas is not easy to kill. Like, I mean, they should be live to like have all kinds of scoring if they are down. So this is not really an easy game for Missouri to cover, in my opinion, at all. I pretty strongly lean Kansas, but I probably need 7 to feel worth giving out on this stream or betting anything meaningful myself. I'm completely dying to bet Navy. I'm dying to bet Navy. So UAB, if you missed it, UAB played horrible, I believe, against Alabama A&M last week. I will say the Alabama A&M, if that is the team they played, their quarterback is actually really good. And I also will say UAB held like 4 defensive starters out last week, and we're kind of a mash unit that will play this week. So you don't need to like destroy their rating just because Alabama A&M went off on them. But, they were never going to be good based on any offseason, the defense, based on any offseason work. There's zero reason to believe they would be. I believe Navy scored 50 in this game last year. I think they have real issues. I think in 3 or 4 weeks they play Tennessee. I'll just front run myself right now. Tennessee is going to score 60 in that game. Definitely 55. I mean, I don't know how you make them a lot better than like a -20. I mean, this is like getting in that conference like a really low team to me. And I don't think the quarterback's a joke. I don't think the offensive coordinator is a joke. They're they're not actually a negative 20, but like, for example, I don't really know if they play Utah State on a neutral and it's pick, I'm making a small bet on Utah State. Like I have to make UAB down and like the low negative. If you somehow aren't following or didn't pay attention last year, Navy's offensive coordinator is fucking awesome. I mean, I don't know if he's ever going to be a head coach. I don't know enough about personalities and stuff. I should make sure my audio is working. Do I have comments on? All right, looks like we got enough comments. Sounds like the audio is working. That would have been really bad to talk for an hour with no audio. You guys can tell I'm not a streamer. I mean, they're easily positive. It's like, I'm just going to say, this is like the best academy passing quarterback I've ever seen. And their backup's really good. I think, what's his name? I should have written it down. It might be Woodson, maybe. Whoever the backup quarterback for Navy is like an elite athlete in that conference. You should go watch his run. I think he played VMI last week. You should go watch his runs. I'd expect him to play some here, like not even because it's a blowout. Like they're going to give him snaps and series to play. But yeah, this coordinator is really, really good for Navy. And yeah, they're starting centers out. Is that on here? Let's see if I can help you guys out. You guys are good. Yeah, I think it's Nichols is the starting center for Navy. He's out. None of the other guys mean much. There's nothing to do, but I swear to God, this game should be 23.5. But I'm not going to kill myself like I would Utah because there is enough weirdness. And, there's some world UAB is in like the mid or like even low negative teens. And if they are, that's not a good bet. But I mean, I don't see Navy punting really once. Just being honest. I can sit here and say the market's good on all these, or I can tell you my opinion. I'm going to tell you my opinion. I've never really liked this North Texas quarterback. He holds the ball insanely low. Is Western good enough to take advantage of this? I don't think so. Western did play both quarterbacks last week. They're going to do that again this week. Their plan was to alternate series more than they did last week, but it's Jones and Brock. I'm sorry, guys. I'm still learning everybody's names. I want to say Jones and Lowry are the names of the quarterbacks. I'm sorry, guys. That's really unprofessional. That's another thing I did want to apologize for. I was really lazy to just throw out the USC Missouri State game last week. That was really bad. I just have way higher standards of myself than to say I'm not betting that game, so I'm not going to research Missouri State because there was a really good halftime in that game. I thought the halftime was going to come like 28.5, 28. I was going to lean under the way Riley controls those, but it came 24, and I think I made it like 27. I loved over, but didn't watch or pay attention enough or do enough off-season research on Missouri State to know if I should do anything there. And I think they're way more of an over merchant than I realized, and that was really sloppy, lazy off-season work for me. Anyways, yeah. Western Michigan's playing both quarterbacks, probably alternate more than they did last week. I still think they're in the pretty low negative teens. I think North Texas is close to negative 10. To be honest, this number is a little high to me again. Clearly, the market despises Western Michigan. Should they have given credit to Michigan State for Western Michigan for coming back to cover against Michigan State last week? I don't know. It's not like they were obviously the right side. It wasn't like that competitive a game. But 21.5 is a ton for what's clearly an average team. I don't think Western's that bad. I'd like the coach. Is North Texas going to care enough to want to go to Kalamazoo and win by a bunch with a defense that bad? Maybe. Totals come down a lot. Probably a little too much, but I'm not doing anything. These are not my teams. I'm not going to waste time here. To me, Georgia Southern I'm not shaving, but if they were point shaving, it would have looked like that second half. I mean, that was nuts. Sorry for spitting. That was completely nuts. I've seen run fits that bad in my life. Oregon State doesn't really run in the same way. I'm getting ahead of myself to the USC game. Oregon State's quarterback looked really bad. They got in the middle of the game against Cal, made it like somewhat back and forth and competitive. I will say like the first two Cal touchdowns required some pretty crazy throws. Fresno's quarterback, is not going to really take those risks. Cal quarterback looked fucking amazing, by the way. Oregon State is probably decently negative. I don't think they're going to score a lot of points this year. As we talked about, this receiver, who's Clemens, out for the year, I think matters a lot for them. He was going to play a pretty meaningful role for them. I just don't know how Fresno's going to come off of that. This coach was like crying emotional on the first win, like freaking out from this Georgia Southern game where it literally looked like Georgia Southern was throwing the game. So I'm still skeptical of this team. Just, you're down 3 or 4 scores to Kansas the whole second half and you can't cross the 50, like really bothers me still. That can't mean nothing. And, they were just basically pick at home to Georgia Southern. So like, I don't want to start making Fresno like a -5 or anything. So yeah, they're probably, even hating Oregon State, probably a slightly worse team. Probably this is giving Fresno a little too much credit for last week and penalizing Oregon State a little too much for last week. But with a team that bad, I'm not interested at all. There's too many good games this year to bet on dog shit quarterbacks like Oregon State. That guy can't play. Troy's running back is out for the year. Got one. Let's go. Let's see how fast they had it. Troy's running back is out for the year. He's actually pretty good. Let's see if I can get the name. I'm bad with names on some of these teams. I don't have the name, but they're starting running backs out for the year from last week. They're probably pretty bad again. Probably -15. I wouldn't be so freaking out on Clemson being this incompetent team off that. Like, to me, that looked a lot more like LSU has finally built a really legitimate SEC contending defense. But yeah, you should score more than 10 points at home. So if you wanted to slash Clemson into the high teens, I don't blame you, but they were pretty clearly being rated as like a +23 last week. So if all of a sudden you're going to make them +17, which is kind of what the market's doing here, unless you think that they're just really trying to win and get out of there. But based on how Clemson has handled some of these losses, like you can go look at Clemson versus App State last year. Like they've been pretty pissed off into some of these games against teams they can kill. I wouldn't be stunned if 31's cheap, but I haven't bet it. All right, here's a bet. Sorry for taking so long. This one, I'm going to be honest. Like usually I can explain why the market is, you guys are fast. Usually I can explain why the market is what it is and why this edge exists. I don't really have a good reason for this one, but I think Miami, Ohio +15 is like a very good bet, like at least 55%, to be honest. Underdog Miami, Ohio. Rutgers just closed this against Ohio. The game landed 7 days ago or whatever. Yeah, 7. I think they played on Friday last week. I don't know. If your takeaway from that game, I know Rutgers got bet all week. If your takeaway from that game is Rutgers was the right side to win by 3 against an Ohio team with a new coach that's supposed to be down a little from last year, with a kick return, is like we just view the sport of football differently. Like I don't think that game is 15.5 if it's played again this week at all. Like at all. That was a pretty competitive football game. Miami, Ohio, even accounting for Wisconsin's backup quarterback playing most, like Edwards doesn't mean a lot to me. Obviously, it's putrid. They just scored 0 points. I'm not making some case Miami, Ohio is going to be this fun team to bet on. But all Miami, Ohio has been, anytime they've ever had a quarterback for the last decade, is like a -5 power rating. Like easily, if you average out the last decade, like easily the second best MAC team behind Toledo, just in terms of roster quality and how they match up in these real games specifically. So yeah, like I'm really not a DeQuan Finn guy at all. This is probably a slightly down Miami, Ohio team, especially seeing that receiver Virgil, what he's doing for Texas Tech. But they still have like this number 20 on their defense. The defensive end is like complete game wrecker. I don't know who the fuck Rutgers is to be laying. Like, I mean, Rutgers just in market was rated as like a very low positive team. We're not close to the right side. I kind of thought they were a 0. I kind of still think they're a 0. I don't know what really separates, like, let's say Rutgers and like BC and Michigan State. Like they're all kind of right there around like a 0. And Miami, Ohio hasn't been a -10 at any point in my life, basically, since I've been doing this. They had one the 2 or 3 years ago, 2022, when Gabbert got hurt, they had, is Avion Smith his name? They had a glorified running back playing quarterback where they probably were like a -10 for a lot of that year. Maybe Finn is that, but I mean, he's not. Like, Toledo recruited him. Like, Miami is a -8 and Rutgers is a 0. I honestly have moderate conviction in this. I'm not saying this game should be 10, but like with this total that funnels down towards benefiting dog too. I don't understand this at all, to be honest. Like Miami was just 18.5 to Wisconsin and Wisconsin got bet all week. I mean, I don't think at all Wisconsin was clearly. I know they scored 0. Miami, Ohio did not look good on offense. I get it, but it's one football game. There's nothing about this quarterback that should be making him incapable of moving against a Rutgers defense that just gave up 30-something to Parker Navarro. And I like Ohio, but like as an example, Rutgers was favored. We laid Miami, Ohio 3.5 over Ohio last year. They killed them. They only won by 10, but they gave up 2 concessions at the end, I think. It was not close. And then, Miami, Ohio got killed in the MAC title game by Ohio, but they were 2-point favorites. I mean, I don't know. I wish there was like some, like, I can understand why this total is the way it was. I'll get into like games I like later on this week. I understand. I don't have any rationale other than this one just somehow slipped cracks and people didn't look at it. But how the fuck is Rutgers 15 against Iowa? I'm sorry. I'm sure they're going to win by 25 now, but like, I don't. That price has never been that price since like Ray Rice went to Rutgers. I don't know. It could lose, but like another part of this too is like Chuck Martin gets these guys up for them, and like they play, the way they play is like so hard to kill them. Like there's so few possessions. They play such solid defense, and like I know they haven't played, Rutgers, but like has Rutgers been like 10 over Northwestern? Because they've been favored against Northwestern the past 2 years and like been the right side. And like they played Cincinnati. Like Cincinnati lays over Rutgers. For sure, Cincinnati lays over Rutgers. And Miami, Ohio is covering against Cincinnati and easily covering this number against Cincinnati. I don't know. I don't know why that number's there. 11.5 is my price with moderate conviction. And as you can see, like if I was a billionaire, I'd bet more. But you guys see my situation. Like I'm not, I got what I want. I don't get that one. Bowling Green's probably awful. Drew Pines certainly is awful. It's priced in. Congrats to everybody who got Cincinnati early. I won't waste time. I mean, I don't love this Oregon quarterback as much as everybody seems to. I sort of love the roster, but I don't want to be confidently making this much more than like a plus 25. Like, I think they play Penn State soon. Like, I mean, Penn State's easily going to be favored there. Like on a neutral, can they be a lot more than pick against Penn State? I don't think so at all. Maybe they're 1. I mean, I think they're plus 25. If you missed it, Oklahoma State's quarterback got hurt. I don't think that means a lot. This guy Flores almost played last year as a true freshman in the BYU game. They played somebody else. Neither are good. This whole program is moving in a really negative direction right now. Part of what's probably got priced in a little, I think I saw this move up to 29 throughout the middle of the week, is there is some back and forth with the coaches of Gundy saying, extreme paraphrasing, but saying Oregon basically pays to be good. We don't have that type of money. And Lanning responded saying, I would hope you'd pay. You can go listen to the comments. The guy's gotten them pissed off to make a message against Colorado before from 2 years ago. Is he going to do the same thing here? I don't know. They've been pretty good with him in these big number games. I could see easily the handicap for Oregon making this cheap, definitely at 27.5, but on numbers, it would just be such a preposterous call to me. Like, I love the handicap games. Like, let's see if I can find an example from last year. Well, like here, it'll be here. It's got to be on here. Last year's people will remember this one. Is it not on here? Oh, yeah, this one. All right, so this was, I know Trent Dilfer, if you don't know, like his family tragedy and what happened with one of his kids. UAB has this game every year for the Children's Hospital where they go spend the whole week with the kids, put their names on the back of their jerseys. They do it every year. He's talked about for years now. It's a big reason he took the job is this Children's Hospital game. Tulsa just won after like some 30-point comeback from UTSA the week before. It's like the 1990s handicapper, like everything about a handicap of like the worst spot in the history of the world for Tulsa, the best spot in the history of the world for UAB. Like that was UAB's Super Bowl. Tulsa had zero chance of showing up in this game, in my opinion. I love betting those games, but I'm not going to do a bad number. And so we laid 2.5 here. And that was easily what the rosters were all year. And so in my opinion, that handicap was zero priced in. So I don't know if that handicap of the Children's Hospital, this horrible spot for Tulsa, I don't know if that's worth 1 point, 3 points, 7 points. Maybe it's worth 35.5 points. I don't know, but I'm quite positive it's not zero, but I'm guessing and I can't quantify it perfectly. And so for me to want to go bet a bunch of money on something, I need the price to otherwise be perfect. And so I love these games like Oregon, where there probably is some angle where Oregon want to kill them. But I think that's priced in because if there was zero of that, I'd probably be making this 27, 26.5. Could I be nitty and maybe that cap angle is worth 3 or 4 or 5 points, which would make 28 cheap? Probably, but I'm going to err on the side of nitty and I won't beat myself up at all next week. This is not like passing on Utah last week. Like there's no reason for me to bet this. Texas State quarterback looked pretty good last week. I didn't know. I mean, nobody really knew a lot about him, this freshman. I will say Texas State was 2.5 in this game last year and won like 49-10 and kicked the shit out of them. Like I talked about last week, these coaches love each other. There's like a big family history between them. Another tragedy involved. I won't go into it. That result kind of surprised me, to be honest, that they would kill them last year. UTSA stood up more than I was expecting against an A&M team I'm pretty bullish on. They could be bordering on positive, which if they are, if UTSA is a zero, which the market is kind of saying, in my opinion right now, this price is probably perfect. But that is a stretch from what I was expecting a week ago, and maybe it's reacting too much. But there's not that much of a reaction towards lifting Texas State. Like, they were around this price and power. It's kind of giving like Texas State 2 points of credit for last week, which might be deserved. And maybe EMU is horrible, and we'll see. But it'd be dog or nothing for me, and there's nowhere near enough meat on the bone. Delaware, if you missed it, there's quarterbacks out for the year. This guy's stats were really good last week, Minicucci. But they played Delaware State, who's one of the worst teams I've ever watched play football. If you don't know, Deshaun Jackson is the head coach of Delaware State, and he is a very good friend of Deion Sanders, and they've helped each other like kind of have advice through this coaching industry and stuff. And so to the extent Delaware State's internal scouting report of the Delaware game could matter at all, I would expect it to have been shared with Deion this week. I would change Miller and Hayden both to doubtful for Colorado based on how Sanders talked about them this week. If you missed it, Julian Lewis, this huge king shit recruit, is going to play for Colorado in this game. He is not going to start, but he's going to play in this game. After watching last week, I still feel good leaving Colorado somewhere around a zero. I could call them like barely positive. I think there's a world Georgia Tech's a pretty solid team. And it's not even like completely undeniable. Georgia Tech was just like obviously the right side. They're probably barely cheap, but like 4.5 is probably a good number. And like there's a world where Georgia Tech's a 10, which if they are, then Colorado is probably like a 4-ish. And Delaware might be horrible with his backup quarterback. So I will say Delaware has some FBS players. Like this wide receiver, number 19, literally looks like he could like play at Colorado. That's like a deep receiver room still this year. I mean, that's saying a lot. Like this guy's, I have no idea why he's at Delaware, but he's like a very real FBS player, I think. I don't know his name, but number 19 for Delaware. To me, the backup quarterback, Delaware's quarterback, who's going to Minicucci, to me, his numbers are really good. They move the ball eventually. he anticipated nothing, threw no one open. He is Delaware's backup quarterback. Like, my prior is not exactly that this is some Heisman candidate. I think it's actually kind of worth something, and the starter looked pretty good. I'm not sure the market reacted enough to that, but I'd rather get involved with that when we see Delaware play more teams of its kind. I'm kind of dying to bet Colorado, to be honest. I just don't have anywhere near enough conviction to do it, and I have no idea what Lewis is going to look like. I'm not going to beat myself up for leaving this alone, but I'm with Delaware and the backup quarterback, like in their first year of FBS, kind of leaning towards like I'd make this game more like 24 and a neutral, to be honest. So this price to me is almost saying like there's no home, which is stupid. But obviously I don't have enough conviction in that, or I'd bet it and tell you to bet it, and I'm not. Waste of time. I mean, Wisconsin quarterback's out. Middle Tennessee is utterly horrendous. I mean, holy shit, they're bad. But I hate Wisconsin too. West Virginia looked pretty good. I think this is going to work quicker than I was expecting. So they obviously go a million miles an hour with Rich Rodriguez. I think this defensive coordinator for West Virginia is very good. Ohio is also super impressive. Very good quarterback play. I think Ohio is still like a -3. There's no real home here. I mean, a couple thousand people might go to this game. I mean, it's like a point of home, let's say. I'm probably cool starting West Virginia around a 5, but I'm ready to get into West Virginia. Just not here. And these are kind of two bet on teams for me. Let me see if I have injuries. I think I do. I will say, like, West Virginia and that whole staff back to it. So they have the coordinator, I think was at Oklahoma last year with Venables, but he was with Jack State with the original staff from Rich Rodriguez. They scheme stuff really good on both sides of the wall. And Ohio in the MAC, they just live in a 4-down front on defense and don't change a lot. And it's kind of like Miami, Ohio. These scheme teams in weeks 1 and 2 against these Ohio is very much not a scheme team. Like, they do what they do. I can tell you right now, the 17 plays they're going to run on offense and like the 3 main coverages they're going to run on defense. Like, there's nothing to not expect. And I think the way West Virginia designs stuff is kind of good for teams like that. Handicapping wise, if you told me West Virginia's cheap, I'd easily believe you. They are still easily a different caliber of athlete, but I would never lay more than 3. So I'm wasting too much time on a game, I don't think. All right, I tweet about this guy. Holy shit. This kick returner for Florida is like, I'm ready to lay prices. This guy's a first-round pick in 3 years. This guy's insane. Vernell Brown III. Holy cow. I know LIU is like worse than most high school teams. I'm not joking about that, by the way. If you bet FCS, please target anti-Long Island bets. But wow, this guy is like really special with the ball. And USF knows it. I think he's from the USF era. Yeah, look, I mean, $1 gazillion got bet on USF on game day, and they won on the field by a lot. What would that game be if it was played again? I don't know. I mean, I've never liked the Boise quarterback. The guy with the Middle Eastern sounding last name, I think, is on the Lions, was a really important defensive player for them, I think. Hassanin. I'm sorry, I don't want to be offensive. I don't know how to say it. And the weapons are not close to as good as last year. And even at their best last year, they probably were around +10. So if all of a sudden Boise is now a +5, that's super believable to me. I kind of think that's fair. And, plenty of handicapping angles and how they funnel differently when they play like dog shit Mountain West teams. But when they play real teams like USF, maybe that's what they are. USF, I was starting out as a 0. I'm pretty super ready to lift them up above that. Brown's no prolific passer. Obviously, everybody knows this, but he's like a really special runner, really special competitor. And I think he's actually really smart and like totally controls and feels the game and sees the field. And I'm starting to really think the world of this coach. So what's Florida? I mean, they're above Mizzou, but below A&M. So, they're in like the very high teens, I would say, like maybe like a +18. And USF, I'm getting close to making like
almost a 5 themselves. Like, I mean, you guys tell me, but like, I'm not saying they'd be favored in that Boise game if it's played again this week, but like, I don't really know what separates those teams. And it's super believable with this coach. I mean, they've been nothing but in this direction since he's been hired. 8 of their games last week, they played with a glorified running back at quarterback. Like, if you want to throw those out, I'm down. And then all the computer models that are starting with priors using meaningless games from last year. If you started looking like, they competed in the last 2 times they played Alabama. I mean, that could be a real team. And if they are, this is actually a little bit big, this number, but I'm not betting them. There's way too much uncertainty to me. In my head, we've seen very few of these like Art Briles offenses when they're completely physically overwhelmed. We've seen USF twice against Bama, and it worked okay. Florida's a lot different from those teams. So it's hard for me to guess on like how this pace and everything plays. I know what it funnels to when they're double-digit favorites, but as double-digit dogs, the sample of these games is actually really, really small. Like we kind of saw last week. I don't know how much we use that data point. So I'm doing nothing. Vernell Brown's amazing. Good luck and have fun. I saw my friend Eddie Walls give over here yesterday. I mean, handicapping wise, it makes a lot of sense. I totally understand why the math people would come back today, though. So if you missed it, Arkansas State played Southeast Missouri last week. Southeast Missouri is fucking dog water. Rayner looked to me like he's improving, like operating an offense and taking what's given to him, and like really playing quarterback. Southeast Missouri took away Rucker the entire game. If you don't know, Arkansas State for that conference has this king shit receiver named Corey Rucker, and completely took him away. I think he had 0 catches in the first half, and Rayner was okay just feeding the tight ends. They ran like more 12 personnel than I've ever seen Arkansas State run. On defense, like I brought up earlier, Arkansas State has a Narduzzi guy running the defense. They are very one-gappy, blitzy, and aggressive. And against Petrino, who hits these big shot explosive plays, that seems utterly disastrous to me. But I also don't think Arkansas State is going to change with it. I'm not calling them stupid, but I just think they do what they do. And I wouldn't expect them to sit back and let, Green run on them for 3 and 7 yards apiece. I thought Green looked really good last week, to be clear, Arkansas's quarterback. They play another Alabama, like Alabama A&M or something. I thought their linebackers played horribly. As the game went on, secondary and D-line played okay. I expect pretty high quarterback play. The one thing I'm fearing is like, if Arkansas schemes as they should against Arkansas State, I think Rayner is going to allow this to be a lot more first downs, clock running, NFL type stuff than what he's been in past years, which is like a complete over merchant 20-yard ADOT, shoving the ball and just causing tons of points in both directions. He doesn't seem like that type of chaos agent anymore. So like math wise, it ends out like, to me, pretty efficient. So I see what he's doing there, but, and I really expect a lot of Arkansas, specifically explosive plays. But that's a hard price to justify them to be much higher than right now. Currently, as of recording, and the market really isn't either, I'm not expecting Alejado to play. Last week was a lot uglier than the Stanford one, and he did not come back in last week. As we correctly predicted last week that he would play all week. My understanding is Timmy Chang is not a liar. He literally said on Monday he's going to play. He's in practice all week. All week he's going to play. I get why people would want to bet against Hawaii, but like the conviction that the market seemed to have that he was out was wild. And like I know it didn't come close to mattering, but like enough times you do this, I got way too much respect for this market. You cannot lay 18 when you can know he's out and just lay 15. You cannot sacrifice those 3 points consistently and come out ahead of it. This game we're playing is not that easy. It's not easy enough to do that. So yeah, you gotta get these right. But I strongly think he's out this week. Sam Houston is probably completely pathetic. the second string quarterback, I thought it was like they were trying to get the kid playing time. I think something happened to Watson where they had to like check on him. He ended up being fine, but of course they bring the backup in and he instantly throws a pick six. He looked completely lost. I had some other notes on this one. Oh yeah, for the future, maybe this is stupid. I'm front running myself. He said as much. They're playing Sam Houston. They're playing in the soccer stadium. This happened with the Chargers in the NFL. You can go look at the records too. Phil Longo basically said like we're going to play 12 road games this year, which is fine, but we gotta get used to it. So just like I was already leaning that direction, but Las Vegas was probably cheap last week. I'm not going to beat myself up on that one, but Las Vegas, well, they were definitely cheap last week, but like I probably need to do a better job of identifying that before the game is played with UNLV, Sam Houston last week. Anyways, these teams are both dog shit. I think the Hawaii backup's horrible. I think they're bordering on like a -20, but I think Sam really is that bad to be like, basically close to the Kennesaw level, like a -25 to where this price is good enough to leave alone. Good luck if you bet on these idiots. That's really bad football in this game. Marshall was slightly more impressive than I expected. I don't like the quarterback at all, but everything else was like way more competitive of a roster than I expected. Not saying they like physically stood up to Georgia, obviously not. And like weirdly for Missouri State, they gave up 73 points on 57 offensive plays from USC last week. Their offense weirdly looked like the bodies and everything, like they look physically competitive. And as I started doing more research on Missouri State this week, like I don't think that's some like obvious -30. I think USC might be a little better than I was expecting this year. And I don't think that quarterback's bad at all. Like honestly, I'm quite convicted Missouri State has the better quarterback in this game. But even still, I actually kind of like Marshall and Price. Like to be tanking Marshall a lot below a -15 feels really extreme, like really extreme. And Missouri, I think they're going to be very much an under team, like dead nut under team. I think Missouri State is going to be a dead nut over team. It's a weird counteracting stuff with that. I've tried labeling teams like that and doing data work on like if there's a favorite who's a big under team against a big over team, like how does that funnel? And to me, I'm not enough of a ball knower to like predict this stuff for that. So incredibly weird football game. Good luck if you bet it. You're going to need it. I lead Marshall. That's giving Missouri State's defense a little too much credit, I think. I think they might be a huge issue. But yeah. So UNC looked in front of the entire country, completely horrendous. I don't know how you start slashing them to like Wake Forest though. Like that, I mean, maybe they are. We'll learn enough from this game, but that feels extreme. It was pretty NFL-y from Freddie Kitchens on offense, just knowing what to do with their totals and everything. But they got the one scripted drive, and after that, couldn't cross the 50 or complete a pass for like an hour. I thought Max Johnson looked better, to be honest, than Lopez. And I'll get into some Lopez derivatives in a minute, but I haven't even confirmed if he's playing because I haven't cared enough because these are two complete fade teams to me. Charlotte was pathetic too. I think App State might be a lot better than I was expecting. And, we're not years removed from App State being like a really legit, like +5. Like, 2019, even they were probably fringing on like a +7 power rate. Like there's been some really good App State teams with a bunch of like NFL players back with Satterfield and Drinkwitz. I'm not, to be clear, elevating them to that level, but there's some world where that's the case. And if you back to like the conditional probabilities and updating beliefs, that plays into like how much you'd be tanking Charlotte. So I'm going to say my best guess is UNC is a -7. My best guess is Charlotte's a -20. My best guess is 12.5 is actually probably a better number here. But if Johnson plays, I would expect them to be able to score. No bet. I hate both teams. So Kansas State on defense has had really bad eye discipline in all their games. That's obviously an issue against a triple option, and it's not like they're going to import a new roster. So that I think is going to be something they're going to have to deal with. That's at least what Creighton said, and I believe him. I'm not currently expecting Dylan Edwards to play. And they have correctly the Army quarterback probable. That would matter decently, I think. Army last year had a really good quarterback. It was always going to be some amount of drop off. I'm not convinced Tarleton State is horrible. And I'm not sure I want to just nuke Army's rating off of last week. Because there's a real world where Kansas State is like only a +10. Like, is Kansas State really obviously better than Illinois to me, or Indiana, or like, to me, Kansas State's pretty clearly. Oh, it's only been 2 football games, but like, I'm pretty happy to make Kansas State like clearly below Texas Tech, all these Big 12 teams, like clearly below Utah. Which, if they are, like, might only be a -5. Yeah, I know there's home, but with the total at 47, you can't make a much bigger of a dog than this. And I'd lean Army decently, but I need to see more from this quarterback. And there is some world where it's just worth so much to them. And like, we've easily seen Army been down around a -10. So maybe that's what they are. Maybe the Tarleton game is going to be like a really bad sign. And the State's pissed off after these first 2 performances. So there's nothing to do, but I do lean Army on numbers. I'm doing nothing with this. I don't see it on here. So TJ Finley, horrible college football player, who's played on like 7 teams now. Georgia State has him on the roster. He got cleared through like waivers to be able to play for them now. I'm not actually expecting him to be relevant in this game, but he's like practiced, but like he's been around the team and like practice and stuff. So it's not like he has to like get in shape or learn the playbook or anything. I think Veyer is the quarterback they want to use. How do you react too much from that? I mean, they have like real Atlanta kids, athletes that can run. Like they're a fast Sunbelt team, just like team speed wise. But they're, I mean, clearly no good. And in like the easy mid negative teens, Memphis is probably around a 0. Lewis looked pretty solid last week. I think it's a pretty meaningful upgrade, and it's a totally different offense than anything Brendan Lewis has done, and especially off of Nevada. So, which is like a very stylistically different offense than what he's doing here. So it wouldn't shock me if Memphis needs a ramp up period to peak. I'm definitely not interested in trusting them to go like win this game on the road. And like, you know, Georgia State showed up, like they beat a good Vanderbilt team on the field last year. You know, they're not this like run over team. So good luck. Let's not waste time. All right, here's a bet. I'm going to track it at 10.5. I think Tulane is really good. I'm not an idiot. I know there's 11s, but there's enough 10 minus 20 and cheap 10.5s. I think 10.5 is fair. I think that's the best number you can see. If you think I'm a scumbag, tell me. 10.5 looks like the right number to track. But yeah, 381 Tulane minus 10.5 is good, I think. Obviously, a gazillion dollars got bet on them last week. I'm pissed I didn't bet that. I'm just going to say what I think. Fuck it. I think this is the best coach in America. I mean, maybe Kirby Smart, but for what I would care about in college football is just having a team ready to play. Maybe Kirby Smart. I don't know who else I'd pick. I think this is the best or second best college football coach in the world right now. I don't know what the guy. I mean, all the guy does is cover every fucking game he's played for 3 years with like pretty mediocre quarterback play. And, you know, after seeing Mensa last week, it's not like he had some crazy ability there. So, yeah, I mean, all of his teams have always been like Troy, everything. All I've done is bet on them. I think they're easily – I had to knock them down just based on where the market had them and all the quarterback uncertainty. But honestly, I don't even think they played that well last week. There's totally a world where Northwestern's horrible. Totally a world where the heat and humidity was a big issue for Northwestern last week. But I have like pretty decent conviction. This Tulane team is like at least a +5. South Al, I mean, back when they were bad, like before Kane Womack, I mean, they were easily in the -20s like forever. Womack had them up there, but like, you know, 2022, I think they won 10 games. It's, you know, they're the scammiest 10-win team in the history of college football that year. Like they've never been much better than a -10, even when they're good. And so now seeing Lopez and knowing how important Lopez has been to this team in the last few years and knowing how much worse Davenport has looked than him and watching again South Alabama last week against their FCS team, seeing Davenport, against this Tulane defense. I mean, I don't need to go over cat's out the bag right now how much I like double-digit road favorites in college football. I think it's the best bet in sports. But yeah, I mean, I'm really confident making South Alabama, like, if they're good, like a -12. Like, they probably lay something against Coastal, but I've never seen a quarterback that can operate a real offense in Davenport. He's actually not that bad of an athlete or that bad of a thrower. He's just, I really don't think a quarterback. And now against this Tulane defense, there's a chance Tulane just played their Super Bowl. They're not going to look better than they did last week all year. If you missed it, Northwestern refused them the right to wear white jerseys. But for me, the takeaway of that is not, okay, maybe don't freak out and upgrade Tulane. That was a one-off all-in performance. To me, the takeaway is all this guy Summerall has done every single fucking week, other than like 2 weeks at the end of last year where the team soft quit on him because I think they knew Mensa was leaving. And I think they correctly thought he was interviewing to get the North Carolina job and kind of like half quit on him. And then they just didn't field a FBS team in the bowl game against Florida. Other than these like really obvious things to just write off and not care about, all his teams have ever done is just kick the shit out of everybody in front of them and played more energized and focused than any college football team I've seen, other than maybe Georgia for the last 5 years. So I think the world of the guy. On numbers, it's cheap. On handicap, I think it's good. He knows South Alabama and Major Applewhite really well from being at Troy for 2 years. They completely controlled those games. One of the biggest bets of my life was Troy 2 years ago in Gio Lopez's first game when Carter Bradley was injured. He gets really good scouting and information on South Alabama. I don't think these teams are close, obviously. No, I mean, neither does the market. They're 10.5 on the road. But I think Tulane's really strong. What do I make it? I mean, honestly, I still think there's some meat on the bone. I mean, I really think 14 is a good number. Basically, what was it before 10.5? The implied final score and like team totals would have been 31-20. I think 31-17 is a lot better. So I do lean under. But with knowing how disappointed Tulane was with the offensive operation last week, that's another thing. I expect there's a decent, based on what Summerall said this week, there's a decent chance Sullivan, the quarterback, can play for Tulane, and they will use both, like intentionally. It's not even like a quarterback battle. They just think having both will help them win the game. As we stand here today, I expect there's a good chance Sullivan could play in this game. Obviously, he fielded and took the victory snap last week, so he'll find some reason to get him pissed off. He always has. They're as trustworthy of a coach program team as I've seen in my career of doing college football. There's my opinion. I can sit here and say they're all close to right. I don't know. Maybe people say I'm dumbass, but I think there's either the best or second best college football coach in the world. And that's not to get like clickbait or anything. I just strongly, genuinely believe that.
Limit increase.
Western Kentucky, nothing. I'm just going to skip games. I think nothing. I will say this is kind of, and I leaned against Rice last week. But for them to go do what they did on the field against Louisiana, who might be a lot worse than I was expecting. I think there's a very good chance the quarterback's a lot worse than I was expecting. But for that game to happen, this market is almost giving them no credit because I don't know. I mean, I'm not a Connor Wigman guy. I don't know how Houston is like this crazy price over Louisiana. So if Rice Lala was just 10 and a gazillion dollars got bet on Rice all week and they went on the field, I mean, maybe Louisiana is like this middle-lane South Alabama, like bad Sunbelt team, maybe. But to go from what they were last year, that'd be like a huge fall, frankly, like a close to mathematically impossible fall. Which, I mean, I lean towards actually like almost 180ing my opinion, which was I was kind of skeptical of Rice, but with the way they play these games with the option, there's so few possessions, like it's hard to go cover 14 against them on the road. I mean, I know there's basically zero home field here, but that's a pretty big number. I actually lean Rice. I'm not betting it. I'm not going to track it. I'm nowhere close to an expert on this Rice roster, but it's kind of a weird price for the market to be so into them last week. I don't know. I love Willie Fritz more than like all of you watching this video. I'm quite confident, but like I don't love Connor Wigman, and I don't know what Houston's done in years to like be this much over. Like if Rice Lala played again, I mean Lala, I don't think Lala's a lot more than 7.5. So for this number to kind of be saying like Houston is 7.5 probably on a neutral over Lala. I mean, I haven't seen that in a long time, but they might be. I'm not betting it, but the price confused me. All right, I have a bet here. 388 VPI Vanderbilt under 47.5 minus 110 is, I think, at least in my estimation, around 55%. Another one, sort of like NIU, where I can kind of understand why the math would have the math where it is. And a pretty big coaching management thing with this game. So Clark Lee, the Vanderbilt coach, if you go watch any of these games where they've played like real teams, manages extreme ball hog to completely limit possessions. Is there a chance they think that they're like the better roster and like maybe they don't even want to do that here? Possibly. Obviously, it's not like Vanderbilt, Texas, or Vanderbilt, Alabama last year. But if you go watch those games, it's such extreme keep away. Like they would nut to gain like 4 yards per play, 20-yard drives, and have this game have 8 possessions total. Like that's their nut dream. I'm quite confident in that. Are they able to, and are the defensive players probably capable of this? I think so. So Vanderbilt, they're by far best defensive player. This guy, I don't know how to pronounce it. Uatara, whatever, the third guy, this defensive lineman. He didn't play last week. He's really good. Like I don't know why Vanderbilt has him, to be honest. But he's really good. Like you have to game plan around this guy. He's playing. He didn't play last week. I think Vanderbilt, for the first time, there's two complete defensive coaches. Like the way they manage everything, punt decisions for everything from Pry since the day he got here. Clark Lee is a total Notre Dame defense guy. Like these are two defensive nuts that are going to manage this like an NFL game. After seeing drones last week, and what VPI was able to do against a kind of comparable offense and quarterback that like runs around and does stuff with Sellers and what's his face, Pavia, means something to me. And so, yeah, what would I be making this? If you don't know, 47 is worth a lot. This current price, the secondary number, I'd leave alone probably, but I would be making it like 45.5. And if I didn't make it 45.5, I'd make it 45. But yeah, I definitely thought 47.5 was good. So somebody who's a doctor has got to explain this one to me. This guy, Destin Hill, the receiver for LSU, had surgery on Monday to put a plate in his hand because it's broken. He's obviously not playing this week, but he's supposed to play next week. Wide receiver with a plate in his hand 10 days after surgery. I don't know. I've never studied medicine. That's like nuts to me. If somebody had told me that is normal, that I'd appreciate it. I just thought that was crazy. LSU, the market might be freaking out a bit too much. Like, I'm probably ready to start calling them a plus 25, where I was probably at like a 23, 22.5 before last week. But like, I leaned LSU in the game last week. Nothing about last week shocked me. And we got to give some world to, all the ACC has been is pathetic for like 2 years in a row. And maybe Clemson's not really special at all. Before we just freak out. But, I will say I've long thought quite highly of this defensive coordinator at LSU, and, maybe he knows what he's doing. La Tech lost a really good defensive coordinator to Coastal, which did not, luckily for us, matter a lot against Virginia. But it's so weird because from the day Sonny Cumby was hired, everything profiled as this like air raid Texas Tech, like dead nut over team. And they've just like completely pivoted into this like G5 defensive program. Like it's really weird, but it's what they are right now. LSU's had the carrot of not playing well in the Nicholls State game last year to get these guys to have a standard here and care about this one. But on price, like you got to start calling La Tech with conviction and like the low negative teens. Like they've got to be not quite as bad as Charlotte, but close to justify betting LSU, which is extreme to me. I don't love the La Tech quarterback at all, but they've played a weird level of defense for Louisiana Tech program. So in a game like this, it does seem like things are changing for LSU. I do think, knowing how Nicholls State went last year, they don't want that to happen again. And obviously they are, if they care and want to, they are capable of naming the score here. It's not like La Tech's defense is so good in that dog shit conference that they're going to stand up against this. They're not. I lack conviction that they're going to care that much for 60 minutes. So if you have information, go ahead, but there's nothing to do. So the market's like 180 on the availability of Boston College's quarterback all week. It's settled into what I think is correct, which that he is playing. My understanding is it's a AC sprain, and he's just playing through the pain. I think it's non-throwing shoulder is why it's possible to happen. I don't know what to do to knock performance. Like, I would believe it if you said I should just price him as 100%. But I'm not enough of an expert with that stuff. What's he worth? Probably enough. I didn't in the offseason think that, but after watching last game and knowing what Grayson James is, and last year they played Western Kentucky in a game. Castellanos was first out, and Grayson James played, and I want to say it went from like 13.5 to 8, and they almost lost on the field. So the market was pricing Castellanos to Grayson James as like more than 5 points, and empirically in results, he looked at least worth that much. I don't love Grayson James at all. He has played enough football, I will say, but this guy looks pretty strong, and I know Bill O'Brien loves him. So I think it's pretty relevant if you see him get re-injured in the game, for example, in the blind and the price doesn't react, I would strongly suspect be worth something. But right now, this price is like almost not come down enough if he is 100%. I mean, if he's 100%, I think that's too much. I mean, this game got played last year. BC was 4 at home. I mean, I see lots of reasons BC would be multiple points better than last year, namely because of the quarterback. And I think the game landed 4. Like 4 is 4.5 BC at home. And it looked like 4.5. Like it was a perfect price. So unless these two home fields have become, and they were just even teams last year, they're even teams again this year, and this home fields are both worth 4.5 points. This number, to me, would be wrong just because I don't think Michigan State has out-improved BC by what I think the market is implying, which is by like 4 points in this offseason. It's a little high to me. I haven't bet it. I'm not the best with like these guys who are playing through injuries. It is college. Like I'm guessing if they're playing, he's good enough to be out there. I lean BC pretty decently, but it is a big game for him. And until I see him play in like a stadium like that, I don't want to be obsessed with pricing it. I'm just going to skip this game. Insane game to bet. Good luck if you do. Kind of the same thing here. I will say with Nebraska, Cincinnati basically runs like a 3-2 defense that what's his face? Matt Rule basically started at Baylor like 6 years ago. And for like the yards per play and everything for last week, like it so encourages, and they took what was given to them, like 4 yards per attempt or whatever they were passing, with like a ton of completions, ton of first downs, and moderate success, but like no explosives. And that's just the way Cincinnati kind of scripted that game. I wouldn't freak out that now Nebraska with what's his face Holgerson is not going to like score any points this year because of that game. Is basically my point. Quite confident Akron's horrible. I'm very confident Wyoming is horrible. And that explains why they were able to limit the points last week. But yeah, I can't say I'm stunned they couldn't score on Wyoming. I wouldn't be shocked if Wyoming's like one of the better Mountain West defenses, but that they weren't that close to scoring. It looked bad. And it's weird because I like Joe Moorhead a lot. I think he was ahead of a lot of things in the game of football. And I don't even dislike Finley. It's just they don't have an operational offensive line or skill guy. And they even got like what's his name? Alex Adams, I think is his name. Like they have like LSU receivers and stuff that have transferred in here. But it's just not happening, and they're still Akron. So Nebraska is probably between a 10 if you don't like them and 13 if you do like them. Akron is probably in like the low negative 20s, but with a total this low, you need to be like a negative 30 to justify laying it, which I'm not there yet. They're not Kent State, but they're really close. Huge spot. I'd be using a big number for home field, but Arizona State's played in a bunch of these. I mean, they're in the playoff last year. Like, they played in big road games. I think they learned a lot about how to travel last year. Like, they had a pretty mediocre game at Texas State early in the year last year, where like half the team got diarrhea eating the hotel food. They're still learning how to like travel to these small teams and stuff. And obviously at Mississippi State, they're gonna have to stay like an hour away from the stadium. Like, there's no hotels that aren't casinos within like an hour of the stadium. They're right there, probably just below Utah.
Limited
Probably
increase.
like pick versus Texas Tech, like with like the good Big 12 teams like Iowa State, probably almost definitely favored against Kansas State. And Mississippi State, I would not all of a sudden just be like up in them like some juggernaut off that. Without Shapen, they're easily negatives, like -6, -7 for most of last year. I kind of want to start them this year as around a 0. For what I expect Southern Miss to be this year, they looked almost like a 0 who runs the Browns offense and goes fast enough to be able to, to begin. I already love double-digit road favorites in college football, but, that was probably always a good side, and a lot to do with like the number and math and Southern Miss than it had to do with like loving Mississippi State as some up-and-coming program. I do like Levy, but I think they do a lot of the same stuff on defense. I think against Dillingham, that's not a great idea. And if you're freaking out of ASU not killing NAU last year, I watched every snap. If you bet FCS, NAU does a lot of exotic stuff on defense. That's not a joke team. They did a lot of stuff on special teams. NAU came into that game like really legitimately trying to win that game and believing they could. I came away 0 from that game, like wanting to downgrade or be disappointed in ASU. I think that was all NAU. They also lost like 90 yards due to called back holdings. Like, I think they literally lost like 90 yards on called holdings, but like the gain of the play on those holding penalties was like, close to another 90. Like, it was almost like a 150-yard swing probably on holding penalties on offense. This receiver looks incredible, like a first-round guy. And if you haven't watched him yet, this Levitt, he's like this is a baller. Like, he has a lot of fuck you. I think he's going to like games like this. I think they travel good. I actually think it's a little cheap. If Mississippi State's a 0, I actually think ASU's at least a 10. And honestly, I think 7's a lot better than 6, even if I use massive home field. I haven't bet it yet. Frankly, if it was painted 6, I'd give a lot of thought to it, knowing it's totally Mississippi State's game. I get it. But I just think ASU's a wagon. I think if Summerall is my favorite coach, this one might be my second. There's just not quite enough meat on this one. It's not like Mississippi State's South Alabama or anything. Material looked incredible to me last week. But this is pretty easily the best defense he's ever played in his life. I thought Underwood actually looked really good for as disappointing as the final would have been for Michigan. New Mexico showed up. I think I kind of, because we'll get to Idaho because of this team in a minute. That Idaho offensive coordinator who went to New Mexico might be solid. I'm quite confident the quarterback's horrible, the New Mexico quarterback who transferred from Idaho. But yeah, Underwood looked good and like very poised, like he sees the field and gets it. And that's all everybody's been raving about for this guy. So my gut reaction is for an 18-year-old to go play Brent Venables in this stadium, in that environment, in this type of game is like, holy shit, I'm not even going to check the price, just bet against them. But I'm not really there with Underwood, and this guy might be kind of special. Honestly, I'm not betting it, but at the current price, with the quality of quarterback play I'm expecting and the frequency of pass attempts I'm expecting, this total, even knowing this is like a big game for both quarterbacks, I kind of like them. I think they're up for it at this current price. I mean, it's not really enough for me to want to bet -110, but at this current price, I'd actually be leaning over like a little more than decently. I'm not going to track it or bet it. But if you need action on the game, this is a hard price to support, in my opinion. One of Michigan's best defensive players is out in the first half for targeting. I don't know I forget if they put these on here. I'm not yet expecting Rod Moore to play. He's fairly important, especially against Oklahoma type, but I'm ready to call, at least relative to last year, Oklahoma's offense fixed. And knowing like the millions of dollars that a bunch of other teams tried to pay Mateer and the guys they took instead, I'm letting that market number kind of inform me on how good this guy should be, and I believe it. So I would prefer it if I had some sample, more than one game of him, playing really well against a Michigan level of defense, but we don't, and we're guessing. Sidewise, I mean, I want to say Oklahoma is like not quite on the A&M Ole Miss
Limited
level,
increase.
but like I'm not sure they're on a neutral. Like I think Oklahoma could be like an 18. Like Oklahoma Florida is probably a good game that we pick. Michigan didn't. It's not, they couldn't really throw a forward pass last year. So, we're projecting a lot that this is now going to be some like competitive 2025's passing game offense. I think it's there, but like we are projecting it. Like honestly, it's not like it was obviously there against New Mexico, which it should have been. So like there, I guess what I'm saying, like there's a world Oklahoma is like a 19, and there's still a world Michigan is like a 15, and there's like 4 points of home here. And honestly, Oklahoma's getting cheap. Like I would believe that, but I'm not betting it. I don't really believe it. I just could if we saw it. Georgia Southern has stayed in Oxnard this week from Fresno at the Cowboys facility. They've had a curfew, but like they've been letting them go to the beach and like vacation all week. It's not the greatest energy for me from a team that literally, like, if you think I'm lying, like you can find footage, like go watch the second half of Georgia Southern Fresno and tell me that there weren't multiple defensive players on Georgia Southern betting against them. Like that was crazy. Like I don't know. You give me 20 carries in the second half against that defense, I think I'll find like 50 yards. I mean, that was crazy. I do not run a sub 540, to be clear. So yeah, I don't know what to do with them. This quarterback I kind of hate. I mean, he just, I don't think he sees offense. It's tough because like he's a good athlete. He works hard. He's also like not even a bad thrower. And it's so clear he's like trying, but and cares. And like I hate like being against the guy, but like he just does not see football, I don't think, with these interceptions. The one last week, to be fair, was not his fault, but I've seen enough of his football from last year. Like this guy's a complete turnover machine against D'Anton Lynn, who I think is one of the most underrated defensive coordinators in the sport, maybe the most, maybe one of the best, is not good. And USC looked like they might just be a plus 20. And if Georgia Southern, they look like pick against Georgia State right now to me, which is like a negative 15, then this would still be cheap. The move totally made sense. USC is not ranked in the AP poll. If you're going to bet this secondary number, you need to be convicted that they care about that. I'm not yet. I think they know they take care of business, and with the schedule, like they do have Purdue next, which is not a complete freebie after how they looked last week. That's why you'd be betting it, basically, is to impress the AP voting. And just, I mean, they are probably athlete-wise, like physically capable of it. I can't think that hard about it unless it's 28. But I'm kind of dying to bet USC, to be honest with you. All right, Bama, I don't know what to do. I don't know how good at Florida State can be. I will say they traveled horribly last year. They may just have be like an immature team who's like incapable of traveling right now. I believe that. I've seen multiple teams like that in my time doing this. They might just be that. Because, frankly, Simpson didn't look like a joke. He didn't look bad at all to me, actually. It was weird. So I don't know what to do with them. I mean, if they're a plus 20, Monroe is probably like very low negative team, like, just below Georgia Southern, Georgia State in the Sun Belt, like, worse than Coastal even probably. And I like Brian Vincent, but it's Louisiana Monroe. Like they're not going to be at that level yet. And that quarterback play is nowhere near good enough. but they do play like the old Brian Vincent style of football from UAB with like 12 personnel running the ball, a bunch of tight ends and play action, and run enough clock and usually get enough yards and first downs to make it hard to destroy them, which I'm sure Alabama would like to do off that performance. I don't know what to do with like their material goodness of football. Like I kind of think if they're plus 20, there's nothing to do here. Like to justify lane 35, you need Bama to like feel good about that. I would need Bama to for sure be like a plus 23 and a half power rating, which I definitely, and the market did too, thought with conviction before last week, but it's hard to have conviction in that right now. I mean, that game wasn't fluky at all. So I don't know how much of it was not carrying. Obviously, there's a bunch of clips on social media of them jogging around. I don't know. UCLA was pathetic. As expected,
increase.
Nico could not handle this defensive coordinator at all. I'm going to be remembering 2025 week 1 Utah UCLA for not betting this game. I truly think I'm going to be 50 years old and remember not betting this game. I cannot fucking believe I did not bet this game last week. I'm sorry for my language. I mean, I knew Utah was high teens. I knew UCLA was a 0. I knew that game should be 10. And I don't know if it's stage fright with the camera, not wanting to look like an idiot. I don't know why I couldn't just speak my mind and think clearly and see what that game was. It's all it ever was. I mean, I can't believe I didn't bet that game. So yeah, I'm not even downgrading really UCLA off that. I mean, that's probably the worst they'll play all year. Utah did have the benefit of novelty, and as much as I dislike Nico against real defenses, like he is who he is as a recruit and clearly physically capable of, like he did make some crazy third down scrambles and runs and like can make throws. So I don't know that they're all of a sudden that much worse than a 0. And UNLV, I mean, just last week was like single digits at Sam Houston, who's in the -25s. Now it was the wrong number, but like, and based on freaking out against the Idaho State game, but I mean, they were just getting priced as like low negative teens. So, they probably weren't that. They're nowhere near what they were with Odom. I don't think Calandria's played that bad, but he's a turnover machine, especially against like a power 14. That, I would expect to have some amount of pride and show up here. So I'm not betting UCLA, but like on numbers, I actually do think it's a little cheap. And I do not like that team. I do not like that coach, and I do not like that quarterback. And it has nothing to do with me going to SC, but I'm just trying to make money. But I think we'll learn enough that I can leave it alone for now, and I won't beat myself up for not doing anything there. So I love the Tulsa coach. Trey Lamb is his name. I think they're going to be good. But they were just 5 at home to Abilene Christian. And now yesterday they got bet up to be 5 on the road at New Mexico State. And it's kind of like New Mexico State is not, in my opinion, they're not Kennesaw or Kent State. Like I don't think this quarterback Fife is bad. If you'll remember, he in the COVID year that Jay Kaner got hurt for Fresno, he's the guy who came in and finished the year for them. But like he's played plenty of real games and like lots of real college football. And like he actually made some big throws last week. They have like a real running back too. God, where is he from? He went to Old Dominion 2 years ago, and he was on a Power 4 team last year. Cal. He was on Cal. I kind of like this New Mexico State running back and quarterback. And I don't dislike the coach, and they play hard. I think Tulsa's roster is clear. I mean, look, they're 4 on the road. Obviously, they're better. But I'm not assuming there's some walkover easy win for a team to travel together for the first time ever at altitude and then go care and execute for 60 minutes against New Mexico State. Abilene Christian is very good. Graham Harrell runs their offense. And after Abilene Christian scored a little on Tulsa at the start, they figured out what they were doing and shut it down. This was, to me, really impressive in-game adjustments from Tulsa last game against Abilene Christian. And the quarterback play was more than good enough. So, and they covered by a mile. So there's a world where Tulsa is like a total bet on team, and they might be in like the low negative team. And like I like this coach a lot. Like I'm very willing to make Tulsa a -10 at some point this year, but from what we've seen the last few years, I just need to see it one time against the FBS team before believing it. And I don't. So I'd be having like around -15 probably to start. And New Mexico State probably very low -20s, like -21 or something. Call it 6 on neutral, to where I know there's not going to be a million people at this game, but that travel is not an easy game for them to go care about, to where I'd have this price pretty perfect. But these are actually, from my perspective, really interesting gambling teams. All right. I have a bet here. I'm going to track it at 20.5 -115. That seems fair to me. There's a ton of 20.5. I think -115, 20.5 on BYU is fair, and I think that's a good bet. Like maybe the best out of all of these, to be completely honest with you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I've talked enough about how much of a complete joke Stanford is. It's not really their fault. They can't let anybody into the school. They don't have players. They don't pay for any of this. Everybody knows this coach is walking dead and he's just here for 1 year. They fired the coach way late in the cycle. No one's going there. And now they have this quarterback who just had like a 26th grade on PFF against fucking Hawaii. Couldn't do anything outside of one drive where they ran 20 plays and just handed it off like 17 times. I think Stanford is completely abysmal. I think they're very clearly the worst Power 4 team. I think usually these are my favorite teams to bet against, like Purdue last year. The market just seems really allergic to updating fast enough to how bad these dog shit teams can be when they're Power 4 teams and when there's not much of a precedent of them being priced down that low. But with the state of this roster, I just think that's where they are. I know BYU has a teenager at quarterback. I know he only threw 7 or 9 times last week. He looked really good. He looked really good, man. He looked a lot better than his brothers. I think this is the best one by far. I think BYU is really solid. I think BYU has a top 5 defensive coordinator in the sport. I would not be surprised at all if their defense scored a touchdown in this game. I think Gil Branson has like borderline complete yips if you watch anything of what he played against. I mean, it's insane. I think it's a really hard game for Stanford to go play. I know they're off a bye, but I still think there's net real home field for BYU here. And the biggest thing of all of them by far to me, he's never going to say it. I listen to all these guys all week. Sataki won't say this. They're not in the AP poll right now. I know that's all they're talking about. I know they want to make a statement. He will never say this to the media, but I know enough about the guy. They care a lot. I strongly suspect about winning by margin. I strongly suspect they're capable of it. I definitely lean under, but at the current price, that's been taken care of. And like I said, BYU's defense scoring, if not legitimately, but like definitely by creating a short field, is a decent probability. So I'm not expecting them to run up the score like Penn State does. I don't expect that at all, but I totally expect a message game for BYU to put us in the AP. So yeah, I think Stanford's a -15. But Jesus Christ could come down on earth and tell me they're a -10 and I'd call them a liar. Like they're not that. So if they're not -15, they're -13. And BYU, I think, is easily a 10. I think this quarterback's really good. I'm not expecting Nakua to play. I forget his Puka's brother or a cousin, but I don't expect him to play. There's a couple others. But yeah, I mean, go watch the Portland State game. I mean, I think they run for 300 yards if they need to here. That's my opinion. I can just sit here and say I have no opinions, or if I think something, I can tell you. Maybe Stanford will compete. I'll come back and recap this and own it if they lose, but I don't see anything resembling a competitive game here. And on numbers, it's just like very cheap. But like the big thing is, I'm quite positive they know they're not in the AP poll right now and have a message to send and are able to. I'll breeze through NFL, make it really short. If you're just here for games, I'm not going to have anything strong here. There's one that might be worth something, but a little. But I'm not going to track any official plays here. If you want to log off, I don't blame you. I've kept you long enough. I'll breeze through. Pittsburgh is perfect price. I could go into injuries, but if you took 3-110 earlier, you'd probably keep it. I mean, obviously, I will say really quickly, I do really like betting under on these low total games. You'll notice me throughout the year hunt those. They actually play to a lower number than people realize on these like extreme under 40 totals. Maybe I'm fucking myself by saying that out loud, but this one, weirdly, I do expect, well, the matchup's obvious for this total to be the lowest one on the board this week. I do expect a weird amount of touchdown scoring ability from both teams in the red zone to not like this at all. So I think it's perfect. I'm dying, as most people have listened to me talk at all the last 8 years, to always bet against Tua against real teams. Not really convicted this is one. There are some really susceptible defensive backs in this game. But honestly, like the way Miami matches up is pretty good here. And like, I actually kind of lean Miami, to be honest. And I hate betting on these guys, but the way Miami's defensive personnel is set up is very biased on defense to the front seven, to where all the holes are secondary. I know the Colts have one of definitely the most underrated, and one of, if not the best wide receiver corps in football, to be honest. I'm not convinced Daniel Jones is the one to be able to exploit that. He could be. He's certainly likelier than Richardson. But on power ratings, I'm actually pretty close to, still, as much as I dislike them, calling Miami slightly positive. I mean, they've been rated a lot higher than that throughout this tenure. And if they are like something positive, Indy's clearly, I think, something negative. I'm not using some monster home more than 2 here, and I could get this to be, small favorite Miami, which is, I know it's flipped all over, like where it'd be easier to see with this. Yeah, like you could lay 0-2 with Miami. I don't think it's awful. I'm not betting it or tracking it for anything, but if you need action, I guess I do lean there. I was going to lean Jacks. I got taken care of. The one thing to watch that seems pretty undecided, although, okay, so Ekwonu, maybe that happened during this call. It says Ekwonu is doubtful, and that happened maybe like an hour and a half ago while I was on here. All right, so I think that matters. What's it worth? 5 to 10 cents. I mean, I'm not super into what's going to happen behind him. And they have all the other probables I know about. I'm guessing on Jacks. I mean, maybe keep them barely negative, but the same thing's happening with Carolina almost as last year. Like if you remember 2023, if you were part of the free halftimes that year, like just bet under and against Carolina every halftime and pregame too. And, it was like 75%. Just doing that. And then people like freaked out and thought they might see some improvement next year. Started out horrible the first 8 weeks, where they were still power rate down, like frankly around -10. A lot of that had to do with defensive injuries for Carolina. Derek Brown and JC Horn mainly, to where they were eventually just playing like not NFL players on their defense for the second half of last year. I love Bryce Young in college. I thought it was going to work. Obviously, I quickly 180'd and exploited that in 2023. I maybe won small or broke even being against it last year. This turnaround that like he played 3.5 okay games against teams that didn't care about the game that much from my perspective at the end of last year, I'm a little dubious. Look, we'll never see him be as bad as 2023 again. I'm quite confident. But like the market's fixed that. Like I was getting eager hearing all like the positive Bryce Young stuff that like people are going to trick themselves into thinking Carolina's going to be good again, like September last season. But it's just not happening in price here. So there's nothing to do. I think the price is perfect. I'm just wasting time if I talk about these. I don't even have this possible lean here. I do have a lean here. I do lean dog, and I weirdly lean under. They're not fun bets to make. I'm not betting them. I'm not tracking them. But to start being confident that Cincinnati is a lot better than a +1 right now, even with that quarterback play, when that was like at their best, what they really were most of last year, feels extreme. And all anyone's told me is like Cleveland's going to win one game and how bad they are. I mean, with that coach, the quarterback's clearly getting worse, but it's not like he can't play in the NFL. They still have like many blue chip NFL players. Like, I mean, Garrett might be like just not like on Madden ratings, like if you had to rate how good each player, like Garrett might be the best player in the NFL. Ward is close to as good as it gets, which matters a lot against this team. I don't want to start calling Cleveland like a -7 or something crazy until we see it. And like, frankly, I think they're a lot closer to like a -4, where I'd almost be closer to this price on like a neutral. Now, there's not some monster home here, divisional home. But like this price is getting close to calling it like 6.5, maybe 6.5 juice favorite on a neutral, which is a bit much. I would take on a neutral, I think I would take Cleveland +7 for something small. So it's up to you what you're estimating what this home could be worth, if that helps you. To me, this isn't worth anything at the current price. But 6 was. I know there was 6s like maybe a week ago. If you took it, I'd keep it. Normally, I care a lot about Christian Gonzalez against Las Vegas, who very arguably has the worst wide receiver core in football. I'm not sure it's the biggest deal, and frankly, that's probably the deepest group on New England's roster. I lean New England pretty strongly and think the market's almost only moved because of Gonzalez and probably too much. I'm not betting it. I'm not tracking it, but I lean New England pretty solidly with an obvious 10 a.m. body clock game for Las Vegas, to where this price is almost asking who's the better team. And while I'm not like max convicted or think it's some like 3-point gap, I am pretty highly convicted New England is at least half a point and maybe 1.5 points better than Vegas, the way I do numbers and care about teams and price stuff. I understand, obviously, the market disagrees with me here. It's not anything special. I only bet against these teams, like the obvious, like dog shit quarterbacks. I used to, like 4, 5, 6 years ago, I used to bet like exclusively on them, like these backups. But this guy's like below the line of anything I would consider until I see it. I will say, like some of these get like Green Bay last year. If you don't know, New Orleans has the best, if not the best center in football, the second or third best center in football. He got hurt very early on in the Green Bay Lambeau game last year. And if you look at, I think they had 4 active wide receivers for the game. And if you look at the names of who was the active receivers in that game, I didn't make $1 on it. That's another one like Utah last week where I'm going to remember not unloading on the Packers against Spencer Rattler when his like best receiver was like MVS and Tipton. I'm not even sure MVS played that game. I think MVS was out. Anyways, so yeah, my point is like there's some world where he's improved, able to operate an offense, and I will say the deck was so massively stacked against him last year, it almost wasn't fair. So if you want to call New Orleans a -7 instead of what I don't know. We'll see more games. I mean, the market might be pricing Arizona higher than me, but like I don't think Arizona is much above average, if at all, and like very arguably could still be slightly below average, which is weird. Like I like Kyler's one of the most talented football players I've seen in my life. It just doesn't work. He's like not big enough to. There's just so many S curves in sports where you need to be above or below a certain line, and I just think he's below that line, and it sucks because he's really fun to watch, but it just doesn't work against real teams. So I don't even have a thought. I just wasted all their time. I'm sorry. Tampa, worth clearly matters, but they've had enough time to prepare around it. So Atlanta, people are getting pretty bulled up on Michael Penix here. The 3 games he played last year was against the crazy nut low Giants team. If you remember, that was getting power rated as like a -11 team when they had 0, like Dexter Lawrence was out, like all their best players were out on defense. They had nothing. Obviously, he put up number. It's an NFL game. Like it counts. I'm not holding it against him, but like that's one of the data points. The other is a Carolina game, which by the way, they lost as I believe like 5.5 or 6-point favorites. That also was playing like if they had 11 guys on defense, 5 of them were basically glorified college football players for the second half of last year for Carolina. And then the other one was Washington, where there were a couple advantageous calls in the first half. Not like Washington was this king shit defense, and that's what's carried them in the playoffs last year. You know, they gave up, 1 million points to Philly and Detroit in back-to-back weekends in the playoffs, like right after this Atlanta game. And they scored 7 points in the second half and almost couldn't get a first down other than that. So I'm just saying, like, I'd like to see him play more NFL defenses, basically, before we say this is what his skill set is. Because he basically played 2 borderline college football defenses last year and then was very mediocre against a slightly below mediocre defense. So let's just see. I mean, and if he had 8 drives in that Washington game, like 2 of them looked okay, 4 of them looked pretty bad to me. So I want to see it. And a lot of people are just getting optimistic Atlanta with like its overall franchise that has just done nothing right other than one Sun Run MVP year with Matt Ryan, where Shanahan went nuts from my perspective. They're really built almost 180 into like trying so hard to get pass rush that I actually think like pounds and body weight wise, they're light up front and probably can be run on and leaned on by Tampa to the extent you can do that in the NFL, which is rare. I think McGarry matters a lot, probably, frankly, more than Wirfs, even though I'd rather have Wirfs on my team. With the way the teams are equipped to replace them, I think that probably matters a little bit more. But everything I just said is basically priced in. Tampa lost both of these games last year. To the extent you care about them having some all-in, pissed-off effort, I'm not doing anything with it. I was going to strongly consider Denver at 7.5, but at this point, there's nothing. I'm pretty easy to start Denver up around like a +2, which I know is a leap. Tennessee is weird. I mean, I don't think they got enough shit, and because some people say it was all Levis. Like this team was one of the worst teams. Like all they did was not cover every single game. I think they're one of the worst teams in NFL history against the spread, which is like very hard to do. Like the market reacts strongly when you're not covering, and they still couldn't, and were just very not competitive in basically any game last year. And the one game they really controlled was Miami against like Snoop Huntley on 3 days of practice. Like they didn't have a good game last year from my perspective. And when you really like contextualize some of them were like extra bad. So who knows? Maybe the coach is horrible. Maybe it's a bad year. I have no idea. Ward looks pretty solid, like better than I was expecting, to be completely honest. I don't need to be against him at this price. This is the one I'm closest to betting. I'll be clear and not get in trouble. I do not know, with a capital K, what's happening. Using context clues, the urgency of the Robinson trade, what happened last year. If you go Google on Twitter, like George Kittle after practice yesterday, they ask him about how excited he is about McCaffrey. He's giving like every nonverbal cue possible that he's lying. He was very clear, like from a PR perspective, to not say, yeah, I'm excited to see him play this week. He said like, yeah, we'll be excited when he's back, or something along those lines. Everything about the interview screamed, if I was like an investigative reporter, this guy's full of shit and lying about all of this. Purdy had a similar one yesterday. I think Shanahan might be talking now. When are they going to update this? I forget what time they practice. Costa Rica. I got to go soon anyways. I'll hurry up. Anyway, long story short, strong lean Seattle and under at this price. It's not stealing enough. If you took on the news last night, like +20, I think you're getting in good. I think there's a realer chance. And how much is he worth? Kind of a lot. I mean, easily more than every other running back. He's almost not even a running back, and easily the best touchdown scorer, and just defines so much on like what the defense does or doesn't have to declare pre-snap. So, I think there's a real argument Seattle's one of the 5 best defenses. I got to hurry up in like 5 minutes. And might easily be an average team, frankly. And I don't know how San Francisco is so much better to be laying this price. And I know it's divisional, but still a real home. Pooney, I expect to play. Sorry, I got to scan through this. I might just have to log off. Anyways, I'll recap the bets. I'll update everything as best I can. Sorry for skipping the NFL. There's more opportunities than these. So forget what price this was. 46.5, I think. I'll go back and track everything, but I think it was 46.5 -110. What was the next one? Miami, Ohio was +15 -110. Market doesn't like that one. Doesn't love it. I really don't think that's the right number. We have any of these? Tulane was 10.5. Vandy under 47.5, and BYU 20.5. I'll track at minus 115. Those are all 5, right? Yeah, it should be. All right, cool. Thanks for making this. Make these shorter going forwards. And I'll see you all next week. Take care. I'll try and do questions at some point.